The story begins in a school courtyard with several students walking toward the building. Then the scene changes and takes us to the high school cafeteria sign. Inside the dining hall, we see many students getting their lunches and sitting down to eat. A boy then tries to wake up his friend who is sleeping on the table and calls him Gavin Clark. His friend says he brought food and that it is time to eat. He then assumes Gavin must be exhausted from staying up late talking to a certain Xenia Scott. At that moment, the protagonist wakes up confused, wondering where he is and smelling something good. He looks at the food in front of him and does not seem to recognize rice and other dishes. Suddenly, the guy slams the table and yells that this is real food. His classmate is startled by the reaction and asks what he is doing. Then Gavin begins to devour the food desperately as if he had never eaten in his life. Seeing that, his friend asks him to take it easy so he does not choke. Meanwhile, the other students stare at the weird scene, with one boy complaining that his food was stolen. Shortly after, the protagonist gets a full stomach and says he is finally back. With a serious look, he realizes he cannot believe it, but he has actually been reborn. His friend asks if he is satisfied and jokes if he was a hungry ghost in his past life. To his surprise, Gavin confirms that he did indeed reincarnate from a hungry ghost. The protagonist reveals that in the freezing apocalypse of his previous life, he passed away from starvation. But his friend does not understand anything and thinks he is like this because Xenia broke up with him. Then the guy puts his hand on his classmate's shoulder to get his attention. Gavin is happy to see that Yaniel Parker is alive and says they can start over and get everything back. Yaniel gets scared and asks him to stop being weird because it is obvious he is alive. The protagonist then desperately asks what the date is, and his friend replies that it is the 8th of August, 2024. At this, he reveals that in half a month the entire world will enter an ice age, and temperatures will drop to -50 degrees. His classmate thinks this is ridiculous since they are in the middle of summer and asks if there is something wrong with him. The reincarnated guy says he needs his help, and Yaniel states he will do what he can because they are friends. With a serious expression, Gavin asks him to lend him 1 billion, which makes Yaniel spit out his drink. His friend asks if he is serious, and the protagonist confirms that he is. Then Yaniel flat out refuses and says he could not get 1 billion even if he sold his own father. Without hesitating, Gavin asks how much he could sell his father for, and his friend replies that at most 500 million. Yaniel is outraged and yells that he is the one selling his father, and even asks if his friend is human. At that moment, a redhead named Xenia walks by with a blonde guy who invites her to a private room he booked. With a serious look, the protagonist watches the two walking away down the hallway. The guy then says that after dinner, they will go to a private movie theater so he can show her something. At this, the reincarnated guy's friend warns him that Xenia Scott is cheating on him with Zach Young, the heir to a massive group. With that, the two of them go up to the new couple to confront them about the situation. The girl is surprised and embarrassed to see Gavin and asks what he is doing there. Then Yaniel defends him, saying he worked so hard for her, and now she is cheating on him with someone else. But the young woman says that since he saw everything, she will not explain anything because the situation is exactly what it looks like. Suddenly, the protagonist gets a glimpse of memories from his past life with the girl. He remembers that she betrayed him, and even so, he took her in during the apocalypse but ended up being betrayed again. His friend calls him to leave since she is not even pretending anymore, but Gavin says he is in no rush. Yaniel gets annoyed and asks why they would stay there, since just looking at her makes him feel sick. At this, Zach begins to mock the guy, saying that Xenia used to call him an annoying bug and that she was right. The young woman then asks Gavin to stop bothering her and says she feels disgusted by him. The protagonist glares at her with a cold look and asks if she is done talking. The blonde guy keeps taunting, and the girl hugs him, saying Zach is her true soulmate. Seeing that, the reincarnated guy's friend asks them to leave so they do not get humiliated, but Gavin asks for 5 minutes. Yaniel gets frustrated and wonders why such a nice guy like his friend cannot see the truth. Zach laughs and accepts the challenge, saying he wants to see what he can do in 5 minutes. Without warning, the protagonist gives the blonde guy a strong slap on the face. Xenia screams Zach's name, shocked by what just happened. Gavin's friend and everyone around drop their jaws, unable to believe the scene. Angry, the guy asks how he dares to hit him. Zach then lunges forward, yelling that he is going to ruin his life. But the protagonist hits him with a kick to the face and tells him to get lost. His friend is impressed by his attitude and wonders if he really is that tough. The blonde guy falls to the floor, and the girl rushes to help him while Yaniel holds Gavin back. She yells at the guy, saying he is finished for hitting the hair of the dragon group. Zach gets up and says he is a black belt in Taekwondo and refuses to believe he cannot beat a punk. But before he could do anything, the protagonist hits him with a punch and calls him trash. His friend is shocked and asks, since when Gavin became such a tough guy. The girl then gets angry and calls the guy a barbarian, saying he will regret it. She demands that he get on his knees and apologize, or she will never forgive him. Without thinking twice, the reincarnated guy slaps her face and asks who she thinks she is. At this, the blonde guy becomes furious and swears he will use everything he has to crush him like an ant. Before he could finish his sentence, Gavin hits him with a precise strike to the chin. Next, he takes a spray out of Zach's pocket and says he knew he would find that. The guy gets desperate and tries to take the bottle back but fails. The protagonist then questions him about how many girls he has harmed with that thing. Zach denies knowing what he is talking about and demands the object be returned, but but Gavin sprays the contents right in his face, leaving him in a panic. The blonde guy starts screaming in pain, and Xenia runs over to see what happened. He pushes her away and tells her to stay back while screaming desperately. His eyes turn red and bloodshot with rage, showing that he has lost control. In a fit of fury, the guy grabs the girl in front of everyone. Then he begins to ruin her dress, leaving her terrified. She tries to stop him, reminding him that they are in the school cafeteria. Xenia cries for help while he continues to aggressively bother her without mercy. The protagonist then tells his shocked friend that the 5 minutes are up and they can go. He explains that the spray makes a person lose their mind and he just gave Zach a taste of his own medicine. His classmate worries about the police, but Gavin guarantees he would not expose himself since he used that on several girls. Besides being a proud hare, Zach will come after him personally to get even. Yaniel agrees that with his personality, he would handle this privately. They walk out of the cafeteria and his friend asks where they are going now. With a confident smile, the protagonist replies that he is going to sell the house. A short time later, they arrive at a real estate agency to make the sale. His classmate questions if he is really going to sell the only house his parents left behind, and he confirms. The guy thinks that with 3.1 million he needs to stock up on as many supplies as possible for the apocalypse. The realtor hands over the papers and mentions she does not understand his rush since property prices are going up. After wrapping up the sale, Gavin announces they have a next stop, and his friend asks what they will do now. With a confident smile, the protagonist answers that it is time to spend all the money they got. Then they arrive at a massive supermarket to start buying supplies for the apocalypse. Without wasting time, the guy asks the employee for 1,000 units of each bag of rice, flour, and oil. In addition, he also orders 10,000 units of every type of canned good that was on the shelf. The market employee is completely shocked by the request and asks if he is sure about this. The reincarnated guy confirms with absolute certainty, while Yaniel jokes if he is setting up a grocery store. Then the young man asks if they deliver, and the lady confirms they take care of everything, including unloading. With that, he turns to Yaniel and asks about an abandoned warehouse his family owns. The protagonist asks to borrow the shed and gets the address, saying he still needs to buy more things. At that point, two girls spot them and start gossiping about how Xenia cheated on Gavin and doubt he can afford anything there. Ignoring them, the guy goes to the electronics section and asks for 5 computers and 10 of each console and TV. He figures that since they will spend a lot of time trapped indoors during the apocalypse, entertainment is essential. The reincarnated guy remembers that in his past life, these two robbed him and left him barely hanging on in the cold. One of them then approaches and invites him to grab something to eat together since they seem like two strangers. The protagonist accepts the invite and asks Yaniel to take the stuff back because he has something to handle. The two celebrate thinking he is a fool and plan to go to an expensive restaurant to drain all his money. Then the guy leaves with the two girls, saying he is starving and ready to eat. They arrive at a huge, luxurious building that houses the restaurant they picked. The ladies ask what he thinks, and the protagonist comments that it looks expensive, but they rush him inside. Already seated at a fancy table, one of the girls asks how the food is at the place. Looking at the menu, the reincarnated guy feigns surprise and asks if that is not a bit too pricey. They immediately deny it and say that if he is not going to order anything, they will place the orders themselves. With that, one of them starts ordering all the most expensive dishes on the menu, like caviar and lobster. An hour later, one of the ladies has a full stomach and says she has not felt this satisfied in a long time. She asks how his meal was, and the guy says it was great and that he is going to step out for a bit of fresh air. But instead of that, he goes to the register and orders 100 tables of the same dishes for 10 days from now. The attendant drops her jaw and asks if the gentleman is sure about such a massive order. The protagonist then flashes a golden VIP card and states he can pay for everything up front. He thinks he ate too many canned goods in his past life and that in 10 days he will find a way to preserve the dishes. The girls comment that he is a rich fool and plan to take further advantage of him to buy purses. Meanwhile, the attendant confirms the order for 100 tables and asks about their dinner bill. But the protagonist says with a smile that they can pay for their own food. He thinks he has already spent almost all the money and that now he will need loan platforms. On the other end of the line, one of the ladies calls, and he simply asks why he should pay. The girl gets angry and says he invited them for a meal, so the bill is on him. The guy replies that they were the ones who dragged him there and ordered everything by themselves. The two are outraged and accuse him of not being a real man for not paying the expensive tab. He then mocks them, saying he warned them about the price, but they insisted on the most expensive dishes. A guy at another table calls him a broke loser and says he is an absolute embarrassment. She insults him, but he dares her to ask the restaurant if he did not just order 100 tables of the same meal. Desperate, the lady begs him to come back and pay the bill since he has the money for the bigger order. But the protagonist hangs up the phone, saying he is not going to spoil rotten fools like them. The attendant informs him that the restaurant does not allow tabs, and the two realize they do not have the cash. Angry, one of them decides to call a guy named Hunter to teach Gavin a lesson. Walking down the street, the guy remembers the lottery and how he won a prize in his past life. He buys a few tickets and thinks that now he just needs to wait 2 days for the result. Shortly after, the reincarnated guy heads back to the warehouse and meets his friend Yaniel. His classmate complains that he was stuck eating instant noodles and working, but Gavin promises a wild night. On top of the shed, Yaniel still does not understand why spend so much money on supplies. The protagonist explains that in the apocalypse, this will save lives and asks his friend to trust him. Yaniel says he seems too normal to be crazy, but that he still cannot quite believe it. With a smile, the guy tells him not to rush, because in a few days he will believe it. At that moment, a group of bullies shows up, and one of them asks if he is Gavin Clark. He confirms and asks if they are the henchmen of a certain Hunter Walsh. The bald guy in the group threatens him for messing with their boss's woman. The protagonist's friend gets scared and threatens to call the cops if they try anything. The bully mocks him and tells him to call because his fists will get there before the police. But with calm composure, the protagonist tells his friend that he does not need to call anyone. The henchman calls him a coward and says it would be useless anyway as they prepare for the fight. Seeing the situation, Yaniel tries to protect his friend and says his father is the boss of a large company. The bald guy then recognizes the kid, but says he will not touch him because their target is Gavin Clark. With that, the protagonist's classmate panics and yells at him to run while trying to hold the guy's back. The bully pushes him aside and lunges at Gavin, saying he's going to crack his head open for provoking Hunter. Terrified, the reincarnated guy's friend screams his name, fearing what might happen, but the protagonist dodges the strike easily and comments that the move was too slow and untrained. In a quick motion, he lands a powerful kick on the bully, making him drop his bat. The bald guy spits a little and is shocked by the kid's strength, unable to believe what happened. Then Gavin picks up the bat from the ground and lands a heavy blow to the henchman's face. He shoves the object into the man's mouth, leaving him defenseless and in immense pain. The other thugs get scared and comment that the kid is ruthless and broke their friend's teeth. With a confident smile, the guy challenges all of them to come at him at once. The group leader gets angry and yells at his men to attack and finish off that punk. The protagonist starts fighting everyone at the same time and says a good brawl is refreshing. Yaniel watches everything with his mouth wide open, wondering if that is still the Gavin he knew. In no time, all 6 guys are down on the ground, and the guy asks if they are tired already. With the bat resting on his shoulder, he demands each one transfer 100,000 to him, and the leader accuses him of extortion. Out of patience, the protagonist lands another strike on the guy who screams in pain. He then threatens to break their legs if they do not pay since they were the ones looking for this fight. Out of fear, the thugs make the transfer, and the guy receives 600,000 in his account. He thinks he is not being cruel because his mindset changed after the apocalypse, and he knows what they are capable of. Then Gavin hugs his friend and says he is going to take him to a very exciting place. The scene cuts to a nightclub full of lights and several women dancing excitedly. Yaniel is amazed and says he loves the place and that it is perfect to calm the nerves. But the protagonist goes straight to the bar and says he is looking for the boss to make a delivery. Suddenly, a corridor of men in suits forms, clearing a path for them. The reincarnated guy's friend gets nervous and asks if this is what he calls excitement. He replies that his heart is racing, but that this is the wrong kind of excitement. Then the security guards begin to salute a certain Mr. Lowe while an older man approaches. The older man asks if they are there for a delivery since he has never seen them at the venue before. The protagonist introduces himself and says he heard Mr. Lowe was receiving goods, which is why he came. The man then questions where the products are since they are empty-handed. With a sarcastic smile, the guy points to himself and says the products are on them. The boss of the place gives an order, and his armed men immediately surround them. Yaniel panics and goes back to using his father's name to try to save himself from the situation. He asks what is happening, and the reincarnated guy reveals that Mr. Lowe deals with human parts. The protagonist's friend is shocked and yells that he cannot help but panic at this news. But Gavin dares the man to buy their vital parts or asks if he lacks the guts for it. Without hesitating, the guy offers all of his vital parts for $10 million. Mr. Lowe makes a counteroffer of $5 million, claiming that the market is down. The protagonist accepts on the condition of getting the money first and handing his body over in 3 days. Then the boss orders his men to prepare the servitude contracts for them to sign. When the contract arrives, the guy points to his friend and says he needs one too. Yaniel refuses to sell his body, but the protagonist insists that he is indeed selling it. One of the henchmen then forces him to sign the contract at gunpoint. Once outside, the reincarnated guy's friend accuses him of selling him out after promising excitement. The protagonist tells him not to worry, but Yaniel is terrified of the crime boss's power. With a serious look, the guy says Mr. Lowe has already done many bad things and that in 3 days he will meet his end. He then promises he will make Yaniel believe the apocalypse is truly coming. Shortly after, they arrive at a luxurious mansion, and the realtor asks if he just wants to rent. The protagonist confirms he is not interested in the other properties for sale. His friend does not understand why they are renting a mansion, and the guy says there is something good there. He remembers that in his past life, the mansion was a safe haven with supplies and an apocalyptic opportunity. Since he met his end in that place in his past life, he decides his new life will start there. The realtor informs him that the owner does not want to rent the house, but the guy offers double the rent. She explains that the owner does not need money, but protagonist raises the offer to 5 times. He then bumps it up to 10 times the amount and offers to pay the first month right on the spot. With that, the realtor gets excited and promises she will get the house for him no matter what. The reincarnated guy sets the condition of being able to completely renovate the house, and she agrees eagerly. Upon leaving, he sees Xenia with her mother, who encourages her to take advantage of the opportunity with Zach Young. Yaniel wonders what Xenia Scott is doing there, and his friend explains that Zach Young has a mansion nearby. The girl notices her ex-boyfriend's presence and glares at him with a look of contempt. With that, she walks up to him and accuses him of stalking her again, demanding that he stop once and for all. Then the young woman's mother humiliates him, saying he is a poor student and will never have a chance with her daughter. The reincarnated guy calls them fools, and the older woman gets furious, threatened to call the cops and have him kicked out of school. He mocks her and asks what renting a house there has to do with the two of them. The ex-girlfriend doubts he can afford a rent of at least $20,000 a month in that place. At that moment, the realtor returns and confirms that the rent for the mansion was closed at $25,000 a month. The girl's mother is shocked, unable to believe that this poor kid managed to rent a house there. Xenia then assumes he did all of that just to be near her and tells him to give up. The protagonist finds the girl's delusion unbelievable, and his friend agrees that she is crazy. The older woman tells her daughter to leave because $25,000 is not enough to impress her. But the realtor reveals that the guy offered 10 times the rent, totaling $250,000. The two are stunned and doubt he has that much money, thinking it is just an act. With a victorious smile, the young man shows his phone with a transfer of $250,000 sent. The realtor then hands over the keys and says the house is his to renovate however he wants. The mother wonders if she misjudged the guy, and Xenia refuses to believe he comes from a wealthy family. Out on the street, the reincarnated guy asks his friend if he knows the boss of the largest renovation company in the city. He then asks Yaniel to set up a meeting because he needs to remodel the place as soon as possible. The protagonist tells his friend to stop asking questions, just book the meeting, because he will find out everything tonight. Shortly after, Yaniel confirms the meeting and says his father had to use his influence to get a time slot. The guy thanks him and jokes that he will send a truckload of instant noodles as a gift for his dad. He even adds not to worry because soon his father will be praising those noodles. Later, they arrive at the renovation company's building, and the receptionist asks them to wait for the CEO. Meanwhile, Xenia and her mother are in the same place taking care of the remodel Zach is paying for. The receptionist approaches and asks if the two young men have an appointment, and the ex-girlfriend spots them. She once again accuses him of following her to the renovation company and says he does not stand a chance. The reincarnated guy gets annoyed at running to those two fools again that day. The young woman tells her mother that he is also there to renovate, and Yaniel mocks the situation. Ignoring the two of them, the protagonist introduces himself to the receptionist and states he has a scheduled appointment. The girl's mother wonders if he is really there for a remodel, and Xenia says he is just pretending to be rich. At that moment, a man in a suit arrives, and the receptionist greets him as Mr. Joe. The employee then points toward the protagonist, indicating that his meeting is with that young man. But the young woman's mother thinks he came to greet them personally because of Zach Young's influence. With that, the older woman snubs the reincarnated guy, saying that is the difference in status between them. Xenia then steps up and greets Mr. Zhao with a smile, introducing herself politely. The man is confused by the approach and asks if by any chance she has an appointment with him. The girl replies with absolute certainty that yes, she is the person he has the meeting with. He then asks if her name is Gavin Clark, and the young woman corrects him, saying her name is Xenia Scott. The businessman pushes her aside and tells her to move out of the way since she is not who he is looking for. At this, the protagonist steps forward and introduces himself as the real Gavin Clark. Mr. Zhou is surprised he is so young and invites him in so they can talk in detail. The mother and daughter are left speechless, and Xenia deduces it must just be a connection from Yaniel's family. The scene then shifts to the sign on the door of the renovation company manager's office. Once inside the office, the man asks his young friend what he wishes to renovate. With a confident smile, the guy answers that he wants completely remodel a mansion. The businessman stands up and says that is a small job and that his design director will handle everything. But the reincarnated guy insists it would be better if they discussed the details personally. The man apologizes and explains he is very busy and only deals with large projects personally. Then Gavin states that his is a big project, and Mr. Zhao asks what his budget is. The guy says he has at least 30 million, and the businessman starts laughing, thinking the amount is considerable. But suddenly it sinks in, and he is shocked by the amount of $30 million. Desperate, the man asks if he is sure he did not mean just 3 million. The protagonist confirms with a smile that the budget is indeed 30 million. A director offers to take care of the guests, but the boss says he will handle this project personally. Mr. Zhao still cannot believe it and asks what he plans to do with so much money on a remodel. Then the guy hands over a roll of paper and says his project blueprints are right there. Upon seeing the drawings, the businessman drops his jaw and asks if he is building a bunker. Gavin says he can increase the budget and that the only requirement is that everything must be ready in half a month. The man analyzes the details and realizes it is a war bunker with steel plates and independent systems. The protagonist tells him to assume it is for the apocalypse and offers 20 million up front. With that, Mr. Zhou accepts the deal and promises to mobilize all resources to build the safe house. Outside, Yaniel still cannot believe his friend is going to spend 35 million on a rented mansion. Gavin warns that money will soon be worthless, but his classmate wants to know where the cash came from. He reveals that he got 10 million in loans, and Yaniel hopes the apocalypse is real. At that moment, Xenia and her mother show up and ask how much he spent to get her attention. With an annoyed look, the guy replies that is none of their business, and that he is not trying to attract them. The older woman then brags that her daughter spent 1 million to show what real power is. The reincarnated guy's friend cannot hold back and reveals that Gavin spent 35 million on his remodel. The two start laughing hysterically and say he is just showing off to impress them. He then dares the girl's mother to call him daddy if he proves he really spent all that. The ex-girlfriend accuses him of faking it and says she knows he sold the house for at most 3 million. Confident, the older woman accepts the bet and promises to call him daddy if he proves it. Right on time, the receptionist appears and announces that Mr. Clark forgot his contract. The young woman's mother snatches the paper and says she will expose his lie in front of everyone. But upon reading the document, she turns completely pale and drops her jaw at what she sees. Xenia asks what the amount is, thinking it is a small, insignificant sum. In shock, the woman confirms that the contract really says $35 million. Desperate, she screams that the contract must be fake and that it is impossible for him to have so much money. But the employee defends the company and threatens to sue her for defamation if she continues. The protagonist then turns to the woman and, with a mocking smile, tells her to call him daddy. Without hesitating, the guy gives the girl's mother a strong slap on the face, leaving her dazed. Yaniel cheers, saying the old lady deserved it, and the reincarnated guy tells him it is time to leave. Xenia becomes furious and screams that he is crazy and that she will never forgive him for humiliating her mother. Later that night, the scene switches to the front of the mansion they rented. Already inside the house, the protagonist's friend asks why they came back to that place. With a determined look, he answers that now he is going to make him believe the apocalypse is coming. Yaniel watches his friend walk up the stairs and thinks that he is either telling the truth or has completely lost his mind. Up on the roof, his classmate complains about the strange cold in the middle of summer and that they have been there for 2 hours already. He then looks at his phone and, with a serious expression, says it is almost time. Suddenly, a light streaks across the sky and the protagonist says with a serious look that it has arrived. His friend then asks what that is and says it just looks like a shooting star. The reincarnated guy explains that the real apocalypse will only come in half a month, but there are already many signs. At this, Yaniel panics and yells that the shooting star seems to be heading right toward them. The guy reveals that these stars are opportunities, and whoever catches them awakens an ability. He remembers that in his past life, that star crashed into the mansion and was found by a thief. With that, the protagonist's classmate screams that they need to run because they are going to get hit. But Gavin runs toward the light and says with a smile that this opportunity is all his. His friend then yells and asks if he is out of his mind, and if he wants to cease to exist. Without listening, the protagonist simply throws himself with open arms toward the light. Yaniel drops his jaw and thinks this is the end because his friend was crushed by the star. But as expected, his physical attributes increased 5 times, and he says that is enough for now. With a confident smile and surrounded by an aura, he turns around and asks if Yaniel believes him. His classmate is completely shocked by the scene and stammers, asking if he didn't perish. The reincarnated guy says he is not only alive but also gained an ability and is stronger, but Yaniel still doubts it, saying he does not see any difference, and asks how he got stronger. Without saying a word, the guy simply places his hand on his friend's shoulder to show him. Then he lifts him up with just one hand, leaving him completely terrified by the situation. With a victorious smile on his face, the protagonist asks again if he believes him now. His friend yells that a 198-pound guy like him was lifted with just one hand. At that moment, the reincarnated guy dangles him off the edge of the roof, and Yaniel asks what he is doing. With an evil look on his face, the young man simply tells his friend to go down from there. Next, he tosses him off the roof, and his classmate screams not to throw his life away like that. But the protagonist jumps along with him and catches him before he hits the ground with a massive impact. Yaniel then opens his eyes and realizes with relief that he is completely fine and nothing happened. The guy asks again if he believes him, and Yaniel confirms since he jumped from 33 feet and did not perish. Meanwhile, in the house next door, Xenia's mother asks her daughter what she is staring at so much. The girl says she saw the star fall near Gavin's house, and her mother wishes it had hit him. Xenia tells her mother not to worry because Zach will be back soon to get his revenge on the guy. Suddenly, their doorbell rings, and the older woman puts on a grumpy face. Upon opening the door, the woman is met by Zach Young and greets him excitedly, but he only wants to know about her daughter. At this, Xenia appears wearing a pink dress and calls him over with a seductive smile. The blonde guy then grabs her and says he has been holding back for the past few days and needs a shower. Her mother feels awkward and reminds him she is still there, but he tells her to go boil some water. The girl tells him not to rush and warns him that Gavin has moved into the neighborhood. Zach gets furious and yells that he has not even gone after him yet, and the guy already dares to show up in front of him. The older woman then adds fuel to the fire, saying Gavin rented the house to stay close to her daughter. With that, the blonde guy grabs his phone and swears he will make the guy regret messing with him. He calls a certain Biao and introduces himself as Zach Young with a look full of rage. The scene then takes us to the neon sign of a boxing club with the name Box Club. Inside the venue, a muscular man is in a ring, and the crowd cheers him on to keep going. On the other end of the line, Zach offers $200,000 for the fighter to take care of a person. The guy named Biao accepts the job and promises that in 2 hours he will get back to the young master. With that, he turns to his opponent and says he has a job to do and needs to wrap up the fight. But the opponent calls him a rookie and says he is asking for a beating by looking down on him. Without wasting time, the fighter lands a powerful punch to the guy's face, knocking him out instantly. The crowd is shocked and comments that they have never seen a rookie defeat the champ with a single blow. Back at the mansion, the protagonist explains that this is what the early stages of the Ice Age will be like. Yaniel laments the fate of humanity, and the reincarnated guy asks what he has decided to do. His friend says he will listen to everything he says and do whatever it takes to survive. With a confident smile, the guy tells him to go back home and sell out his father first. But Yaniel thinks his dad would never believe in the apocalypse and would think he had lost his mind. The protagonist explains that in half a month money will be worthless and only supplies will matter. Then his friend chugs his drink and says he will bankrupt his family even if his dad beats him up. Suddenly, the reincarnated guy gets a serious look and notices that something is wrong. He tells his friend to be quiet, and Yaniel asks in a panic what is happening. With a cold look, the guy reveals that there are people surrounding the mansion outside. At this, Bio and his men surround the house, and the boss orders his henchmen to break down the door. One of the guys then grabs a giant sledgehammer and prepares to destroy the entrance. With an evil smile on his face, the man gets into position to tear down the mansion's door, but before he could swing, the door swings wide open and hits him squarely in the face. The protagonist and his friend appear at the entrance, and the guy calmly asks who they are. At this, the fighter is surprised that he noticed them and asks if the young man is also a fighter. The reincarnated guy then recognizes him instantly and calls him by his full name, Duan Hubio. With a confused expression, the man with the mohawk asks how the kid knows his name. The guy remembers that during the apocalypse, Biao was one of the lucky ones who gained powers and had some conscience. The fighter then says Zach Young sent him, and that he will go easy if he just lets himself get beaten up. With a mocking smile, the protagonist says he will not make it hard either and tells him to get lost. The man gets angry and lunges with a punch, saying he will see what gives him the right to talk like that, but the reincarnated guy dodges the strike easily and says with his eyes closed that he was too slow. Bio is shocked by the kid's fast reflexes and cannot react in time. Then, in a swift motion, the protagonist hits him with a precise elbow to the chest. His henchmen are stunned and comment that the boss who just beat the champ was taken down. The guy then grabs the fighter's arm and asks if he gives up, but the man looks irritated. Angry, Biao yells that the person who can make him surrender has not yet been born into this world. Unfazed, the protagonist hits him with a powerful kick to the face, knocking him out for good. With the man down on the ground, the guy approaches and asks with an air of superiority what he thinks. Even defeated, the fighter refuses to yield but admits he was powerless against the kid. The young man says it would be boring if he gave up and offers a way to save his sister. Biao is completely shocked and yells, asking how he knows his sister is sick. The protagonist reveals he knows she has a terminal illness and that he fights to pay for her treatment. Desperate, the fighter asks if he can really save his sister's life. The reincarnated guy states he is the only one in the world who knows how to save her, and that the choice is his. Without hesitating, the man says he believes him for defeating him and asks what he needs to do. The guy then orders him to beat up Zach Young and leave him bedridden for half a month to take his money. With a determined look, the fighter seems to have accepted the young man's proposal. He stands up and, with all his imposing presence, orders his brothers to follow him for the mission. One of the henchmen asks if he really believes the kid, and Biao says he is his only hope. Meanwhile, at the other house, Zach thinks Gavin is already in the hospital and that it is time to have some fun. The scene then shows the blonde guy in bed with Xenia, who calls him terrible with a smile. Suddenly, loud knocks on the door ruin the mood and Zach gets annoyed by the noise. The girl's mother then goes to answer the door, complaining about who dares to interrupt the young master. Upon opening the door, she is met by Biao and his men and asks in shock who they are. The fighter shoves her aside without any hesitation and tells her to get out of his way. The woman then screams, outraged by the man's lack of manners for breaking into her house. Out of patience, Biao lands a hard slap on her face and tells her to shut her mouth once and for all. At this, Zach and Xenia appear and the blonde guy asks the fighter if the job he requested is done. He then offers the $200,000 for the payment and says he did not need to come personally, but instead of taking the money, the man with the mohawk lands a powerful punch right in his stomach. The guy is confused and asks if the fighter has lost his mind for hitting him. Biao then simply points at Zach and orders his henchmen to grab him right now. With that, the three men lunge forward and begin beating the dragon group hair mercilessly. The young man screams for them to stop and threatens to use his family's power to finish them all. The fighter then raises his hand and tells his men to pause the beating for a moment. The hare gets up thinking he won and says he made a mistake daring to touch him, but Biao reveals that Brother Clark ordered him to hang him upside down and keep beating him. The blonde guy goes into despair and calls the fighter crazy as he is hoisted up by his feet. He then asks who this Brother Clark is and if by any chance it could be Gavin. Hanging there, he thinks he can only access 10 million without the group's approval. The man with the mohawk then demands he transfer the 10 million immediately to the account. Then we see the cell phone screen with the confirmation of the transfer of all the money. Back at the mansion, Yaniel announces there will be practical training, but his friend turns down the invite. His classmate then says the location is near the North New City, and the guy gets interested right away. He changes his mind and says he will go since he was already planning to explore the place, and his phone rings. On the other end of the line, Bio informs him that Zach transferred the 10 million, and the young man confirms. At that moment, the reincarnated guy remembers his lottery ticket and thinks about getting more supplies. But upon checking the result, he is shocked because he remembered the numbers and still did not win. He thinks about the butterfly effect and concludes that the lottery director is one step ahead of him. With a determined look, he figures he will need to find another way to get money. The next day, the students get on a bus for the practical training and complain about life. Suddenly, the two girls from the restaurant spot him, and one of them asks how he dares to show up. With a confident smile, the protagonist answers and asks why he would not dare to be there. The lady in green accuses him of leaving without paying and says they had to work for a month, but the guy puts on a look of disdain and asks what he has to do with their problem. At this, the girl tries a more seductive approach and says they will do anything for cash. The other approaches and says that if he pays 20,000, they will not go back to the dorm today, but the protagonist turns the tables and asks them to lend him 40,000 first. The scene then takes us inside the bus with all the students already settled in their seats. Yaniel complains he is thirsty and asks his friend for water, but he replies that he did not bring any. At that moment, a girl named QQQ offers a bottle of water to the guy, who thanks her. Without thinking twice, he tosses the bottle to his friend, who is desperate for a sip. The young woman then steps closer and says she heard what happened with Xenia and hopes he gets over it. The reincarnated guy replies that he is happy to have finally seen his ex's true colors. She even offers him her money, but the young man refuses because he knows her family does not have much. Watching the scene, Yaniel comments that the girl is into him, but his friend tells him to shut up. A short while later, the bus arrives at its final destination, and everyone gets ready to step off. A supervisor then announces that he will assign internship positions to each of the students. The students whisper that there are 3 types of internships, and that the one on the first floor is the worst. Holding a clipboard, the man begins calling out the names of those who will be on the 3rd floor. The 2 girls from the restaurant celebrate being on the 3rd floor thanks to a certain hunter. Meanwhile, QQQ watches everything from afar with a serious expression on her face. The 2 gold diggers then plot something against the young woman, because she has no connections in the city. The supervisor continues the roll call and announces the names of the students for the 2nd floor. The protagonist's friend gets frustrated since their names were not called for the top floors. To everyone's surprise, the man announces that the remaining 3 will intern on the 1st floor. The girl who offered the water is disappointed and fears she will not learn anything useful at the internship. The other students start laughing and wonder why Yaniel also ended up on the 1st floor. With an ironic smile, the protagonist calls the supervisor by his name and questions the decision. The man replies that everything was decided fairly by the school and the internship company. The reincarnated guy then calls him a liar and says he is an absolute fool if he is lying. The supervisor gets furious and asks how the guy dares to speak to him like that, and if he wants to be expelled. He then defends himself by saying Yaniel's a rich kid, and even he is on the 1st floor. At this, Yaniel gets angry and reveals that the man asked his father for money to put him on the 3rd floor. The supervisor is left speechless and calls the protagonist's friend insolent for exposing the truth. With a victorious smile, Yaniel flashes his phone and says he has a recording of the entire conversation. Suddenly, another student steps in and says Gavin and his friend have crossed the line. The guy named Wang Da accuses them of having no respect for the teachers and of being ungrateful. The 2 girls from the restaurant agree and say people like them should not even be interning. With an annoyed look, the protagonist simply tells the busybody to get lost right now. Wang Da accuses him of losing his mind after getting dumped by Xenia and calls him a simp. Out of patience, the reincarnated guy lands 2 slaps on the guy's face and tells him to get lost for good. The guy is shocked by the pain and yells to the supervisor that Gavin has completely lost it, but the protagonist hits him with a powerful kick, knocking him to the floor once and for all. At this, the supervisor grabs him and orders him to stop and apologize immediately for everything. The young man then addresses him as teacher and hits him with a hard slap on the face, leaving him defenseless. Yaniel cheers and says it was very satisfying to see the man taking a beating like that. The other students are shocked and comment that he even dared to strike the school supervisor. Angry, the man tells him he is in deep trouble and is officially fired from the program. But the guy asks if he looks like he cares and lands another strike, knocking him to the floor. With both guys down, he calls his friend and the girl to leave the place. Yaniel gets worried and asks what they're going to do with QQQE now that they are on their own. The protagonist then turns to the young woman and invites her to tag along with them instead of staying there. The 2 gold diggers try to convince the supervisor to let the girl go with them to the 3rd floor. They tell the young woman that if she leaves with Gavin, she will not be able to get a job after graduating. But she declines the offer, and the guy tells her to call if anything happens, warning her to be careful. With a confident smile, the young man says it is time to take care of real business now. Yaniel explains that this is the largest logistics park in the province and that it stores a lot of goods. His friend then asks if the plan is to grab the supplies, and the protagonist confirms. His classmate thinks it is impossible because the place is secure and they would not be able to sneak in to steal. With a smile, he spots a hiring sign and says they are going to take a look around the place. He then walks up and, with a smile on his face, asks if they are currently hiring. But the recruiter replies with a look of disdain that they are only hiring women. Seeing that, the protagonist's friend asks what they will do since the place does not accept men. With a plan in mind, the guy tells Yaniel to go back and find QQQ so she can come over here. Meanwhile, at the internship office, we see the girl working hard at her desk. The two gold diggers then get a call from Hunter with a request from a certain Mr. Jing. With an evil smile, they decide to approach their classmate to see if she fits the request. They walk up to her desk and ask with fake interest how the work is going. The young woman replies enthusiastically that she has learned many things she would not see in school and thanks them. With a sinister smile, one of them says it was nothing because that is what classmates do. Then she asks if the girl has ever had a boyfriend, and the young woman shyly denies the question. The other celebrates and, with an excited look, offers to introduce her to a boyfriend. But she refuses because she only wants to work, and the two insist on finding her rich boyfriend. Even with her refusal, the two drag her away, saying she can turn him down if she does not like the guy. The scene then takes us to the front of a massive and very luxurious office building. They bring her into a room and say that Mr. Jiang is a very nice and kind person. Without any hesitation, the two shove her into the room and introduce her to the man waiting for her. With a gross smile on his face, Mr. Jiang praises Hunter for finding such a pure girl. The classmate then tells her to greet her new boyfriend, and the young woman is shocked by the betrayal. Satisfied, the man tells them to go to the finance department to get 30,000 each for the service. They say goodbye and tell him to enjoy himself while the girl begs not to be left behind. But they ignore her and slam the door shut, leaving her alone and terrified of the situation. The man then steps closer and offers more money if she serves him well in that room. Cell phone in hand, the young woman threatens to call the cops if he does not let her walk away in peace. But the creep laughs and says the security guards are all his friends and that no one would help her. Terrified, she begs him to let her go because she just wants to work in peace and nothing else. He then slaps her hand and knocks her phone to the floor, leaving her trapped. With an evil smile, he says it is impossible because no woman has ever walked out of his office untouched. Back at the logistics park, the protagonist's phone rings and he sees QQQ's name. With a confident smile on his face, the reincarnated guy answers the call and asks what happened. On the other end of the line, the man steps on the girl's phone and crushes it to pieces. With a gross smile, he tells her to accept her fate because he loves inexperienced girls. But she grabs a potted plant and refuses to give in, saying she would rather cease to exist. The call then drops, and the protagonist asks what happened but gets no further response. Worried, he realizes something happened to her and says he needs to head back to the internship. Meanwhile, the young woman throws the pot at the man, but he dodges it and she ends up falling to the floor. Angry, he wipes his head and accuses her of not knowing what is good for herself. Next, he lunges forward and attacks her forcefully, saying he is going to make her regret her boldness. Back at the building, a security guard stops the two and asks what they are doing there. Yaniel accuses him of not recognizing the young master, and the guard is confused by the situation. Out of patience, the reincarnated guy shoves the guard aside and tells him to move out of his way. He then tells his friend they are heading straight to the third floor, because the girl is there. The guard tries to stop them and says Mr. Jiang gave orders not to be disturbed. But the protagonist lies and says he is the man's father and therefore does not need to wait for anything. The guard drops his jaw and wonders how such a young guy could be the boss's father. Realizing something is wrong, he desperately yells for more security on the premises. At that moment, the two gold diggers walk out and comment that Mr. Jiang must be having a good time. They then run into the guy and are shocked, asking what he is doing there. One of them points toward the boss's office and confirms that their classmate is inside. She even warns him not to be reckless because the man is well connected and everyone works for him. Ignoring the warning, the young man simply kicks the door with all his might and busts it open. Inside, the girl screams for help and the man gets annoyed, asking who let them in. With a furious look, the protagonist orders the fool to let go of the girl immediately. The man then threatens him and asks if he knows who he is talking to and where he is. Intimidated, the guy simply grabs the finger the creep was pointing at him. In a swift motion, he breaks the guy's finger, making him scream in pain and drop to his knees. The man keeps screaming desperately and asks someone to call the building security. But the reincarnated guy kicks him in the face and tells him to cease to exist once and for all. He then approaches the girl and asks if she is okay, and the young woman thanks him for the rescue. Suddenly, the building's security arrives and angrily asks who dares to cause trouble there. The man orders the security guards to finish off the two, and they charge at the boys. The two girls cheer and say they deserve to take a beating for defying Mr. Jiang. But before they could do anything, one of the guards is thrown back and knocks the two women to the floor. They are shocked to see all the security guards down and do not understand what happened. Fallen on the floor, the man asks in a panic what else the protagonist wants from him now. With a cold look, the guy says he is going to make sure he never thinks about women again. Next, he hits him with a precise kick to his lower areas, leaving him in agony. The young man then turns around and walks away while the creep screams in pain on the office floor. With an intimidating look, the reincarnated guy stares down the two girls who betrayed him once again. They beg not to be hit and try to use the fact that they are classmates and women to their advantage, but the guy questions them about how they treated their classmate and slaps one of them. Next, he slaps the other and says the only reason he does not finish them off is that they might still be useful. He then calls his friends to leave, leaving the two on the floor and the man in agony. One of them tries to help Mr. Jing and offers to call the police to have Gavin arrested, but he gets angry and hits her, saying he cannot report it, and orders her to take him to the hospital. On the way, the man calls a certain Jiang Beichuan and asks him to make a kid disappear. Already outside, the girl thanks the protagonist for saving her from that situation. He says they are classmates and asks what her plans for the future are from now on. The young woman laments that now that she lost the internship, her job prospects look grim. With a smile, the guy offers to find a job for her, which catches her by surprise. She eagerly accepts the proposal, and the young man takes her back to the logistics park. They then approach the hiring desk again, where the two men were waiting for them. The girl asks if he really wants her to work there, and the protagonist confirms. She feels embarrassed because her degree is in finance and the position is for warehouse manager, but he reassures her by saying every job is valuable and that she can shine anywhere. The recruiter then rushes them and asks if they are going to take the job or not since they are closing. With a little push from her friend, the young woman agrees and goes to the desk to sign up for the spot. The guy says goodbye and tells her to work hard, because in a few days they will come visit her. Yaniel then comments that only a silly girl would agree to be a security guard instead of using her degree, but the protagonist replies with a smile that this is exactly why she got the chance. After dropping the girl off safely, they head back to the mansion to get ready. Suddenly, the protagonist feels a weapon against his head and a voice tells him not to move. Upon turning around, he realizes it is Mr. Lo's men and raises his hands in surrender. One of the henchmen says the 3 days are up and that their bodies now belong to the boss. The reincarnated guy's friend asks if he is really going with them and says they could beat them, but with a confident smile, the guy tells him to go along because the show is about to start. They then get into a van and are taken to an unknown location in the middle of nowhere. When they step out, Yaniel realizes they are at an abandoned factory in the outskirts of the city. One of the men points his weapon and tells him to hurry up without asking too many questions. But with a swift movement, the protagonist spots the perfect opportunity to strike. He then spins around and snatches the weapon from the henchman, leaving him completely caught off guard. Next, he hits him with a precise blast to the head, making him fall to the ground instantly. The young man then uses the man's body as leverage to push off and get ready for more. The other three are shocked by the scene and point their weapons at the guy in anger, but he is faster and lands a blast on each of them, knocking them down without a chance to fight back. The reincarnated guy's classmate drops his jaw and praises him for being such an accurate marksman. Without saying a word, the guy simply tosses one of the weapons to his friend, who is terrified. He remembers that in the apocalypse, since he had no powers, he trained his aim to survive. Yaniel then says he does not know how to use it and is afraid of hurting himself with the weapon. The protagonist asks if he plays shooter games, and his friend answers proudly that he is a pro. With an ironic smile, the young man tells him to just pretend he is in one of his games. Meanwhile, in a yard full of shipping containers, we see a truck being unloaded. Yaniel is shocked to see the name Zyway Biotech and wonders what such a huge company is doing there. The reincarnated guy reveals they are not as simple as they seem on the surface right now. Suddenly, two men in military uniforms show up and demand the two identify themselves. But before they could answer, the protagonist fires at both of them and takes them down accurately. Upon grabbing one of their ID cards, he confirms they are employees of the massive biotech firm. Nearby, a woman praises Mr. Lo for the quality of the pieces he provided. With a satisfied smile, the man says it is an honor to cooperate, and that 2 more pieces will arrive. At that point, he spots the 2 young men approaching and recognizes them as the kids from the club. The crime boss then introduces them to Ms. Pei as the last 2 living pieces of the set. The corporate woman finds the situation odd and asks why the 2 boys are armed. Before he could answer, the reincarnated guy points his weapon at him, leaving him in shock. Without hesitating, the protagonist fires toward the man with a serious and determined look. Hit in the leg, Mr. Lo screams in pain and orders his henchmen to grab the 2 kids. But the young man is faster and takes down all the men with impressive and precise aim. The executive is shocked by his marksmanship but orders her men to attack immediately. The guy tells his friend to hide and jumps over a container to take care of everyone. He keeps firing accurately and takes down more henchmen who try to get close to them. Furious, the crime boss yells that they must not want the organs anymore and orders them crushed. With both tools in his hands, the reincarnated guy takes down all the remaining men without missing a single shot. He then approaches the woman and calls her by name, leaving her surprised and scared. With a mocking smile, the protagonist says that if she insists, she can call him daddy. The executive is furious at the kid's insolence and tells him to stop playing games. But he simply fires at her leg, making her collapse to the ground with a scream of pain. She then threatens him, saying she is from Zyway Biotech, and that he will face the consequences. Unbothered, the young man fires at her other leg, leaving her completely immobilized. With a cold look, he states he is not the least bit interested in her useless threats. Desperate, the woman begs not to perish and reveals that Mr. Lowe gives them human parts. With a serious expression, the reincarnated guy then asks what kind of experiments they are running. She explains they research human evolution and bioweapons and offers to take him there. The guy figures it all out and realizes the mantis god of war was created using human test subjects. The executive is shocked and wonders how he could know about such a top-secret project. At this, Yaniel opens one of the crates and screams in horror upon seeing it is full of human parts. The woman then tries to cooperate and offers the young man a job with power and wealth in the company. But the protagonist points his weapon at her and firmly states he is not interested in the offer. She begs for her life and says she can still be very useful to him in some way. With an ironic smile, the guy asks in what way she could possibly be useful to him now. In a desperate attempt, she says she is very good with her mouth and looks at him in fear. Out of patience for that, he simply takes her down, leaving her fallen on the ground motionless. With a look of disdain, he mocks her, saying she cannot even stop a bullet. Then he grabs an access card and celebrates having found the entrance to the headquarters. 3 days later, Mr. Jiang is in his office and yells after learning about problems at the company. Angry, he complains that he is an investor and was not informed about the situation. At that moment, a muscular man walks into his office and introduces himself as Hunter. The boss then hires him to handle a punk named Gavin who humiliated him. Hunter says he already has a grudge against the guy and that he will soon deliver one of his hands. Meanwhile, at the mansion, the protagonist receives the news that the structure has been reinforced. Mr. Zhao reports that the next step is the interior remodel, which will be finished in 1 week. Suddenly, an older woman approaches him and introduces herself as Aunt Lu from the neighborhood committee. She then invites him to join the neighborhood chat group to make communication easier. After joining the group, the woman asks for the cardboard boxes from the remodel, and he refuses. The guy says it is not a good time, but she insists on going inside to grab the boxes. He repeats that it is not convenient and asks her not to delay the construction progress. Even so, she insists, and the young man offers to bring the boxes over in 1 week just to get rid of her. But the woman refuses and says she wants the boxes right now because she fears he might sell them. Out of patience, the reincarnated guy gets annoyed by her persistence and tells the woman to simply get lost. She gets indignant and accuses him of cursing at her for no apparent reason in the middle of the street. He then threatens her, saying she better leave or he will find a way to make her disappear himself. The woman walks away complaining about the lack of respect and swears he will get what he deserves. In another place, Zakyung offers 500,000 to a group of muscular men. Their leader, known as One-Eyed Dragon, says it is their duty to serve him. The blonde guy then demands they make Gavin disappear completely without leaving any evidence behind. The man with the eye patch guarantees he is a professional eliminator and that the kid will be gone tonight. Satisfied with the answer, Zack watches the group of men leave to carry out the mission. With an evil smile, he thinks the protagonist has no idea of the power he possesses. The scene then takes us to the front of a luxury hotel, asking if he is sure. One of the henchmen reports that Gavin is in the presidential suite and that the kid is pretty rich. One-Eyed Dragon tells everyone to stay alert so they do not let the kid slip away. Once inside the room, the reincarnated guy relaxes on the sofa and thinks everything is going according to plan. He then thinks that in 3 days the most important stage of the plan will begin and everything depends on its success. But suddenly the guy gets a serious look and notices a strange noise coming from outside the room. At this, one of One-Eyed Dragon's henchmen sneaks down the hallway with a weapon in his hands. With an ironic smile, the protagonist realizes they are Zack's men and decides to mess with them a little. Through the door, he overhears that another group has arrived and there is more than just one team of hitmen out there. On the other side, Hunter warns his henchmen not to be careless because Gavin already defeated one group and stole their cash. But the man shows his weapon and says with a smile that this time they are very well prepared for the mission. The boss then gives the order to finish off the guy and cut off one of his ears for Mr. Jiang. With a plan in mind, the young man turns off the lights and says the night is lively and he's going to have some fun. Seeing the lights go out, Zack's men assume the kid went to sleep and order a breach. At the same time, Hunter's group also decides to advance, yells for their men to attack with everything. Both groups then step into the dark hallway, unaware they are not alone on the mission. Suddenly, One-Eyed Dragon senses someone's presence and orders his men to halt immediately. He then points his weapon and tells the guy standing in front of them not move an inch. But Hunter stares back and says with a mocking smile that they are the ones who should not move from there. The man with the eye patch gets angry and asks how a punk dares to be so arrogant toward him. The other henchman mocks him and says he must have gotten the script wrong, because that is his line. Angry, One-Eyed Dragon yells that the kid is finished and will not escape no matter what. Out of patience, Hunter orders his men to attack because the punk is way too arrogant for his taste. At this, the other boss also loses his temper and yells for his men to finish them all off right now. Then the two groups start firing at each other right in the middle of the dark hotel hallway. The henchman with the eye patch yells that the kid is back up and orders everyone to grab their weapons. On the other side, Hunter's man warns him about the heavy backup, and the boss orders everyone to fire. Meanwhile, Gavin just watches the two groups of fools clashing with a smile on his face. After the firefight, One-Eyed Dragon leans against the wall and says he finally took them down. Fallen on the floor, Hunter gets up and the other asks what One-Eyed Dragon is doing there. Hunter asks the exact same thing and says he is there to eliminate the punk Gavin Clark. The man with the eye patch then realizes they were played and that the kid probably already got away. 3 days later, Daniel approaches his friend, hands him something, and the guy asks what it is. He says the supervisor used his connections to get him expelled, but Gavin does not care about a diploma in the apocalypse. His classmate complains he cannot stand seeing the supervisor's smug face bragging in the class chat group. With a confident smile, the protagonist says he has a way to deal with that fool. In the chat, the man announces the expulsion, and a student congratulates him while the supervisor taunts Gavin. The reincarnated guy then grabs his phone to reply to the taunts with a serious look. Without thinking twice, the guy sends a sticker and calls him an idiot in front of everyone. The supervisor gets furious at the response and calls him an unemployed bum in the group, but Gavin reveals that he is having an affair with the principal's wife and shares where they meet up. Daniel drops his jaw at the revelation and asks how his friend knew all about that. The protagonist reveals that during the apocalypse, the supervisor confessed everything when they were trapped at school. Panicking, the man orders the admin to delete the group and threatens anyone who leaks the story. The reincarnated guy's friend laughs and says the guy is freaking out and that he is going to post it all on the school forum. With that, the guy tells him they need to go because they have important business, and Daniel asks what it is. Gavin asks if his dad still does not believe it, and his friend says he is one step away from having him committed. The young man promises that after their mission, they will go together to convince his dad of the truth. The scene then takes us to an urban village with several buildings and narrow streets at night. Upon arriving, Daniel wonders what could happen there, and the protagonist announces they have arrived. His friend looks at the house and comments that for this neighborhood, that is a rich person's residence. Inside, a man angrily complains that he is out of drinks once again. We then see the man drinking surrounded by bottles, while a little girl is locked in a cage. With a furious look, the man glares at the girl who is trapped inside the small metal cage. He then throws the bottle at the cage and tells her to stop staring or he will rip her eyes out. The man complains that the dowry was too small and that he is going to sell the house to get more money. But with an evil smile, he decides he will sell the little girl first to buy more booze. Next, he grabs her by the hair and drags her out of the cage violently. The man threatens her, saying that if she disobeys him, she will meet the same end as her mother who disappeared. In an act of courage, the little girl bites the man's hand with all her might. Furious, he raises his hand to strike her and says she is going to join her mother. But before he could do anything, the door is busted open and hits him squarely in the face. At the entrance to the house, the protagonist and his friend appear with a serious and determined look. The man then asks who they are, and the guy replies in a threatening tone, asking what he thinks. The protagonist remembers that this man is Feng Q, a scumbag who gained the hyperspace ability and became a hero. But he betrayed the government and ran off with the supplies, causing the loss of 1 million people. However, Feng Q did not meet a good end and ultimately fell victim to an ice demon, and the supplies vanished. Gavin is surprised to see a little girl there, as he did not remember her from his past life. The man mistakes them for traffickers and tries to sell the girl, saying she is as pretty as her mother. At this, Daniel gets angry and calls him a beast, but the guy does not understand anything. The protagonist's friend then repeats that he is a beast and that he is worse than a pig or a dog. The man becomes furious and questions how a human trafficker dares to act with such arrogance. But Daniel denies the accusation and asks how he looks anything like a trafficker. Out of patience, the man threatens him, saying he will crack his skull open for causing trouble. But before he could do anything, Daniel blasts his lower areas, leaving him in agony. The protagonist then praises his friend's aim, which seems to be getting better every day. Fallen on the floor with a wounded leg, the man desperately asks who they are. With his weapon drawn, Daniel says he is not going to let a scumbag like him get away with it. Suddenly, the little girl grabs a bottle and smashes it against the man's head with all her might. Seeing the scene, the two friends are completely shocked and speechless at the girl's actions. Holding his head, the man gets angry and asks how the brat dares to hit him. Without hesitating, the girl hits him with the broken bottle again, her eyes full of hatred. He gets up and swears he is going to skin her alive for daring to attack him like that. With the broken bottle in her hands, the girl gets ready to strike again with fury in her eyes. Daniel tries to stop her, but the protagonist tells him to leave her alone, and she continues her attack. The guy thinks this is pent-up hatred and that if he stops her now, her life will be ruined. The scene focuses on the broken and messy bottle in the little girl's hand with a somber vibe. After the attack, the man is left lying on the floor, and the girl watches him, panting heavily. The reincarnated guy's friend gets scared and says he is done for, and Gavin states he deserved it. The protagonist says it is almost time and asks Daniel to take the girl to wash up. Up on the roof of the house, the young man watches a meteor shower falling from the night sky. With a confident smile, he says the greatest opportunity before the apocalypse has arrived. With open arms, the guy prepares to receive the light and absorb all of its power. Surrounded by a powerful aura, he celebrates and says with a smile that he did it. Floating, he is surprised that the space is bigger than he imagined and that he can store as many supplies as he wants. Back on the roof, the guy has his thoughts interrupted by a strange noise coming from the street. Looking down, he is surprised to see a police car parked right in front of the house. Down below, a man tells the cops that Feng Ku sent him there to sell him a girl. With that, the officer gives the order for his units to prepare to raid the place. The scene then shows the little girl freshly showered and wearing clean, new clothes. Yaniel then comments to his friend that once cleaned up, the little sister is actually quite cute, but his classmate panics and warns that the authorities are outside and they still have the weapons in the body. The protagonist tells him not to worry because before they'd have had to run, but now it is different. With a simple gesture, the guy makes Feng Qiu's body disappear, leaving his friend completely shocked. Suddenly, the police kick the door open and order everyone to surrender immediately without resisting. The officer then points his weapon and seriously asks which of them is this Feng Qiu. A man points at the three of them and says no one there is the guy they are looking for and that he is not around. The cop gets annoyed and asks what the two young men are doing in that house. With a smile, Gavin introduces himself, saying he is the girl's distant cousin and came to visit her. Yaniel rushes to say he is his classmate and only tagged along to keep him company. The officer steps closer to the girl and, with a smile, asks what her name is. With a calm and serene voice, the little girl replies that her name is Sixie. The man points to the protagonist and asks the little girl if she really knows him. She confirms right away, saying he is her cousin and that her mother had mentioned him before. With that, the police officer leaves, asking them to contact him if they hear any news about Feng Qiu. Relieved, Yaniel celebrates that they finally got out of that situation and that they can go. The little girl then approaches the protagonist's friend and stares at him with a curious look. His classmate remembers her and asks what will happen to Sixie now that the man is gone. The reincarnated guy turns to the little girl and asks if she wants to tag along with them. With her eyes shining, the little girl immediately confirms that she wants to go with the two boys. Yaniel says they should take her, but Gavin warns that he does not support freeloaders and she will have to work. With a smile, he then asks the little one if she knows how to make instant noodles. The little girl flashes a huge smile and excitedly says she knows how to make that dish very well. Satisfied, the protagonist says they will all go together, and the three of them walk out of the house. Yaniel says he is hungry and invites them to eat, and the guy asks Sixie if she eats spicy food. 3 days before the apocalypse, they arrive at his friend's mansion, and he confesses that he is scared. But Gavin tells him not to worry, because they need to convince his father no matter what. The boy's father then calls them punks and tells them to leave for talking nonsense all day. Yaniel tries to argue, saying it is all true and that the apocalypse will arrive in 3 days. Out of patience, the man kicks them out again and tells them not to bother him while he drinks his tea. The protagonist then uses his power and makes the man's teacup disappear right in front of him. Startled, his friend's father wonders where his drink vanished out of nowhere. With a smile, the young man reveals he did it and that this is the superpower he has been talking about. But the older man thinks they are magic tricks and that a kid cannot fool him. Without saying a word, the guy makes the sofa the man is sitting on begin to disappear. With that, the piece of furniture completely vanishes, and his friend's dad falls hard on the living room floor. The reincarnated guy then asks Mr. Parker if he finally believes him now. But the man refuses to believe it and says they are too naive to trick him with illusions. The protagonist then places his hand on the floor and gets ready to use his power on a large scale. At this, his friend's dad falls over again and is left sprawled on the floor without understanding what happened. He then challenges him to make everything in the room disappear, and only then will he finally believe. In the blink of an eye, the room is completely empty, leaving only the three of them in the space. Shocked, the man realizes everything is gone, and Gavin asks if he believes it now. Without thinking twice, Mr. Parker lands a hard slap on his own son's face. Yaniel is left speechless and asks his dad why he hit him like that. The man then yells that he is not dreaming and that he finally believes the whole story. The scene then shows us that there are now only 2 days left until the ice apocalypse. On a cell phone screen, we see the confirmation of a transfer of 760 million. Yaniel excitedly announces that his father transferred over 700 million to the account. The guy says they should split up to buy cold, weather gear and weapons for the shelter. Next, we see the front of the rented mansion now completely remodeled. Mr. Zhao reports that the renovation is complete and asks if the young man is satisfied. With a smile, the protagonist says he is very satisfied and thanks him for his hard work. The man says that was his toughest project and that with supplies, one could live there up to the end. The protagonist shakes the man's hand and promises to transfer the final payment as soon as possible. But before he leaves, the protagonist calls him over to give him an important warning. With a serious look, the guy warns him not to go out for the next 2 days and to stock up on supplies. The businessman asks if a typhoon is coming, and the young man confirms it is one that only hits every 100 years. The man agrees to listen because he is exhausted and can use the chance to rest for a few days. A short time later, several trucks loaded with supplies pull up to the renovated mansion. At this, Yaniel shows up and announces he is back and bought the best of the best, including the most expensive stuff. With a smile, the guy tells them to move everything inside the mansion because he will store it in his super-powered space. A neighbor and her grandson watch the scene and wonder if they are opening a grocery store. The little boy then asks his grandma for a lollipop after seeing a box full of candy nearby. Without thinking twice, the woman helps him climb onto the boxes to grab what he wants. Suddenly, the protagonist's friend shows up and says he has a huge problem right now. He then complains that he cannot spend all the money and that he has not even spent 100 million yet. With that, Gavin hands him the addresses of a few barns and tells him to buy all the grain. He thinks that in his past life, those grains were seized by villains, and now he is going to nip that in the bud. One of the delivery guys then warns that a lady will not them move the final batch of crossbows. The woman's grandson yells that he wants to eat the lollipop right now, and the grandma tells him to be patient. The protagonist walks over and asks the woman what she is doing just standing there. She then asks for a lollipop for her grandson since he bought so much stuff and wouldn't mind. With a cold look, the guy replies with absolute certainty that he does indeed mind, very much. The woman calls him stingy and says he owes them the boxes as an apology. Out of patience for that, the young man tells the woman to simply get the heck out of there and get lost. She gets angry and says that, as the deputy director of the neighborhood committee, she can take whatever she wants, but her grandson does not wait and climbs onto the box to grab the lollipop, cheering his victory. Angry, the reincarnated guy loses his temper and orders the woman to get her grandson off the boxes. The boy refuses to come down and says he is going to destroy the villain in the name of the monsters. The protagonist finally snaps and yells for the brat to get down from there immediately. At this, the woman panics and backs away when she sees the bug the protagonist tossed in her direction. Startled, her grandson loses his balance and ends up falling off the box straight onto the ground. But unfortunately for him, some crossbow bolts lying there end up hitting him squarely. The little boy then starts screaming desperately in pain with the arrows in his body. The grandmother picks him up, and the grandson complains that it hurts a lot while the protagonist watches. With a satisfied smile on his face, the guy thinks the spoiled brat finally got what he deserved. The woman then threatens him, saying he will pay for hurting her grandson and that she will be back. From afar, two girls watch the scene and gossip about the massive amount of supplies. One of them wonders what Gavin is up to, buying so many things all at once. The other, who is Xenia's best friend, thinks he lost his mind stocking up on everything in the heat. The redhead then tells them to leave because Zach will handle the guy, and the two head to the salon. With one day left before the apocalypse, Yanil celebrates that he spent all the money on 5 barns. The reincarnated guy says they should meet up with Yukiwa first and then go collect all the grain. Upon arriving at the location, the girl greets him and he asks how work at the park has been. She says everything went well and that she was promoted, but asks how much longer she needs to stay there. The guy lets her know she can leave tomorrow, and the young woman rejoices, saying she will quit immediately. But he stops her and says he needs her to do one last thing for him before she leaves. With a serious look, the young man asks her to get the warehouse keys for tonight. The girl is completely shocked and asks what he is going to do there in the middle of the night. She maintains her surprised expression, not understanding the protagonist's plan. The guy says he will explain later and asks her to wait for him at the park's warehouse. He even stresses the request and tells her not to tell anyone about their meeting. The young woman looks thoughtful and wonders what he could possibly be plotting for tonight. Shortly after, a man announces that all the food has arrived and is ready for inspection. The protagonist's classmate dismisses him, and the man hands over the keys to the other barns. As soon as the man leaves, Yanil notes that they are alone and it is time to start. With a simple motion, the reincarnated guy uses his power and starts collecting all the crates of food. Yanil drops his jaws, seeing that entire mountain of food disappear in an instant. The guy explains that inside the hyperspace, everything stays in the exact same state, like freshly made noodles. His friend wonders if time stands at 0 in there, and the protagonist says he will research it later. Suddenly, the man from earlier returns to grab something he forgot and catches them in the act. Upon seeing the empty warehouse, the man turns pale and drops his jaw, unable to believe the scene. He wonders if he is seeing things, because a mountain of food vanished in a split second. At night, the protagonist arrives at the logistics park warehouse and knocks on the door to be let in. The girl opens the door and looks embarrassed seeing him, saying he finally made it. The guy warns her that what he is about to do might shock her, but she cannot make a single sound. With a serious look, he then asks if she is ready because he is about to start. The young woman nods nervously, her face blushing and her hands clasped in front of her chest. The young man then snaps her back to reality, asking why she is just standing there, and tells her to follow him. With that, the two walk together down the dark warehouse aisle surrounded by shelves. They then stop in front of a massive stack of boxes and apocalypse supplies. He thinks that after this haul, his resources will be astronomical, and he activates his power. A blue light then engulfs the entire warehouse along with a loud, strange noise in the room. The reincarnated guy's classmate drops her jaw and wonders what on earth is happening there. Shocked, she asks how the goods vanished, and if by any chance he was the one who did that. The guy says he will explain later, and that first they need to collect the products from the other sheds. Inside the security room, the young woman questions what they are doing in that place. Using his power, the protagonist simply shuts down all the security cameras in the facility. With a smile, he calls her to leave and promises to explain everything once they get back. Back at the mansion, we see the front of the house fully lit up during the night. In the living room, little Sixie serves tea to the young woman, who thanks the little girl for her kindness. After hearing the whole story, the girl says she believes everything, and his friend is surprised. With a smile, Yanil comments on the unconditional trust she places in Gavin. The protagonist then announces that the apocalypse is tomorrow, and that's starting now. No one goes outside. But the young woman says she wants to go run an errand, and he warns her to be back before noon. The next day, the countdown hits 0, and a man apologizes to the young master. One-eyed dragon explains that they ran into another group and ended up in a friendly fire situation. Angry, Zack complains that his patience has gone from dealing with trash like that. He then decides that this time he will go personally and orders his men to follow him on the mission. The scene then takes us to several stray dogs and cats with bowls full of pet food. We see QQQ feeding the animals and telling them that the apocalypse is coming. She then says goodbye to the pets and hopes to see them all again someday. From afar, the henchman reports that Gavin has not left the neighborhood, which makes their move harder right now. The blonde guy then orders his men to grab the girl to force the protagonist to show his face. On the other end of the line, Yaniel is completely shocked by the news he just received. He then warns his friend that Zack grabbed Chuakuiki and is demanding that he come alone. With a furious look, the guy says the fool is begging to meet his end and will not live to see the apocalypse. Upon arriving at the spot, the hare calls him an idiot for actually daring to show up there. Out of patience, the reincarnated guy tells him to stop stalling and let the girl go first. With that, the blonde guy's henchmen shove her forward and tell her to get out of there. The young woman then runs toward her friend and calls his name with a relieved expression, but Zack calls him knave and fires at the guy with an evil smile on his face. Seeing the scene, the protagonist's classmate is completely terrified of what is about to happen. In a swift move, the young man manages to dodge and throws himself to the ground along with the girl. The dragon group hare is shocked and wonders how he managed to dodge the bullet. The guy asks if she is okay, and the young woman warns that they have weapons and tells him to run. With a confident smile, he reassures her and tells her not to be afraid because he will handle the rest. The protagonist stares down Zack and says he would have let him live longer but will have to speed up his end. The blonde guy then orders his men to torture him for a while but not let him off so easily. One of the henchmen steps up and tells the young master not to worry because he will handle everything, but the reincarnated guy hits him with a precise strike to the face and asks if he came to meet his end. The other henchmen are shocked and wonder how the kid can be so strong. With that, the rest of the men charge at the guy with knives, thirsty for revenge. The protagonist easily dodges the attack and prepares for a precise counterstrike. He then grabs the man's arm and pins him down using a martial arts technique. Next, the young man breaks the henchman's arm and kicks him away with all his might. With a quick motion, he strikes the legs of the other two, leaving them fallen and in pain. The young woman drops her jaw and wonders how Gavin can be so strong and skilled. The blonde guy is also shocked, and the henchman reminds him they still have their weapons to use. One-eyed dragon dares him to dodge this shot and points his weapon at the guy. But before he could fire, he is hit in the chest and falls, not understanding what happened. With an ironic smile, the protagonist reveals he also has a weapon and was prepared. Desperate, the hare kicks the fallen henchman's body and screams that this could not be happening. The girl is shocked and thinks her friend just took a life right in front of her. Seeing that, the hare panics and starts running desperately to get away. But before he could get far, the protagonist fires at his leg, making him drop instantly. With his weapon smoking, the guy approaches and asks if the blonde guy thought he could escape. Fallen, the hare tries to use the dragon group's name to save himself, but the young man does not care. Without hesitating, he fires at the fool's other leg, leaving him completely immobilized. With a cold look, the reincarnated guy simply states that he just did the impossible. Desperate, Zack admits defeat and offers to pay any price he asks for. With an ironic smile on his lips, the protagonist then asks for the sum of 1 trillion. The dragon group hare is completely speechless at the absurd amount of the request. He gets angry and says he asked for a price, not a joke, because nobody has 1 trillion. Out of patience, the guy kicks him and says he will teach him a lesson for acting so tough. The blonde guy starts begging for his life and asks Master Gavin to stop hitting him. But the protagonist calls him a coward and yells that he warned him he would finish him today. Suddenly, a police car pulls up to the scene and orders everyone to stop and freeze. The young man asks if he called the cops, and the blonde guy laughs, saying he did it in advance just in case. Zack then gloats that he cannot touch him anymore, and that he will spend the rest of his life in prison. Unbothered, the reincarnated guy hits him with a precise kick to his lower areas. The hare screams in pain and laments that his happiness was crushed forever by him. The police tell him to drop his weapon, and the guy says he will not do it because that would be too easy. With a confident smile, the young man announces that he absolutely will not be caught by them. The cops then step forward to handcuff him as he raises his hands in surrender. With a smile on his face, the protagonist starts a 3-second countdown. He then says time is up, and suddenly something begins to slowly fall from the sky. The officers look up and wonder in shock at that falling stuff is snow. One of them questions what is happening and why it is snowing in the middle of summer. The scene then shows the entire city being blanketed by a white layer of snow. The officers begin to shiver and complain that it is too cold and the temperature is dropping fast. One of the wounded henchmen screams for help because his wounds are freezing quickly. The police chief then orders his men to save the injured from that blizzard. The girl says the temperature dropped to -30 degrees and that the apocalypse finally arrived for real. At that moment, an officer points his weapon at the reincarnated guy and yells at him not to move from there under any circumstances. The guy then advises the guard to drop the weapon, or his hand will be ruined from touching the cold metal. Sure enough, the cop screams that his hand is so frozen he lost all feeling and drops it. With that, The protagonist approaches the blonde guy and asks what he thinks, since he warned he would never be caught. The hare then begs for help because he is freezing and fears his legs will also freeze solid. Unmoved by the blonde guy's despair, the reincarnated guy turns around and tells him to enjoy the apocalypse. People on the street complain about the cold, wonder what is happening, and call it a natural disaster. The young woman is shocked because everything the guy said came true, and he warns it is just the beginning. With a worried expression, his classmate then asks how long this ice age is going to last. With a serious look and his mouth slightly open, the protagonist simply answers that he does not know, but he remembers that in his past life, the apocalypse had already lasted 1 year when he left, with no end in sight. At this point, people are already starting to loot clothing stores because they fear they will not survive the intense cold that just hit. The young woman worries that social order is collapsing, and the guy says people will lose their humanity. Suddenly, 2 men with knives surround them and tell them to stop and hand over all their clothes. With a cold look, the protagonist simply says they are begging to meet their end and tells the 2 to get lost. The thug gets angry that he is so arrogant, and his partner yells to attack him with everything they have, but with a swift motion, the reincarnated guy blocks one of them and hits him with a precise strike. Next, he pulls out a weapon and points it at the head of the other thug, who looks terrified. With the weapon aimed at the man's face, the young man asks mockingly if he is being arrogant. Terrified, the thug says he is not arrogant, and that with a weapon in hand, the boss is being very humble. The scene then cuts and takes us back to the mansion, now completely covered in snow on all sides. Already inside the house, Yaniel celebrates that while it snows outside, they are eating hot pot, and that is the life. Sitting at the table, the protagonist warns that from now on they must not open the door to just anyone who shows up. On TV, a news broadcast reports on the cold wave and asks everyone to stay safe and keep order. The guy then grabs his phone and, with a smile, notes that the neighborhood chat group is pretty lively. In the chat, one neighbor is confused about the weather, and another is shocked they need blankets in the middle of summer. A psychic says he predicted the disaster, and a lawyer advises everyone to stock up on supplies as fast as possible. But Aunt Leaf scolds them and says to trust the government because the blizzard will soon pass, telling them not to hoard. Reading the woman's message, the reincarnated guy just cracks a mocking smile and keeps reading the texts. The guy then jumps into conversation and advises everyone to stock up on as many supplies as they can. At this, the woman gets angry and calls him a child, saying the blizzard will pass soon, and he thinks she is a fool. 3 days pass, and the temperature outside has already reached the mark of -60 degrees. The young woman laments that the apocalypse hit so suddenly, and that many did not stock up on food and will starve. Phone in hand, the protagonist just watches the 2 of them chat with a smile on his face. In the neighbor group, everyone complains about the cold, and the woman says she is going to inspect everyone's supplies. Suddenly, the doorbell of the mansion rings, and the young man calmly wonders who it could be now. Outside, Aunt Liu and her henchmen say the committee has come to bring a little warmth. But with an ironic smile, the reincarnated guy replies that he does not need it because it is nice and toasty inside. She then identifies herself and demands he open the door, but the guy refuses because of the cold. Angry, the woman yells that she knows he lives there, accuses him of defying the organization, and orders him to open it. With a mocking smile, the young man asks how he would ever dare defy such an important organization. He then says he is not defying the organization, but rather the woman herself, whom he calls an idiot. The woman becomes totally furious and yells that the punk is driving her crazy with all of this. With that, she orders her men to check other houses, because she needs to collect supplies for her grandson. The reincarnated guy then thinks that in 3 days the evil of human nature has already started to show its face to everyone. The scene then takes us to the front of the other mansion in the neighborhood, now totally covered in snow. Inside, Xenia's mother complains that their food will only last 3 days, and the daughter says Zach cannot come. Desperate, the woman wonders what they will do, and the raidhead says they still have money to buy supplies. In the chat, the young woman starts selling off her few supplies at absurd prices and manages to close a deal. With an evil smile, the protagonist thinks she is not completely foolish and knew enough to stash a bit of food. He then thinks that in a few days, those people will regret selling off their supplies. The scene cuts again and shows us that 3 more days have passed since the start of the ice apocalypse. Inside a house, a group of people shivers from the cold and complains that the temperature is already at -70 degrees. One of the girls asks Hunter what they are going to do because the food is gone and they might not survive. Angry, he stands up and says he is not going to just sit around and that they will go out and loot supplies. One of the guys then sees the protagonist's profile in the chat and wonders if it is the same guy they hunted. The girl confirms it is him and cannot believe the guy lives in the exact same neighborhood as them. With a sinister smile, Hunter orders them to send a message to the punk demanding he bring them food. Meanwhile, at the mansion, the protagonist trains Little Sixie and tells her to hold on for half an hour. Little Sixie says with a confident smile that she will definitely pass the train he gave her. Yaniel is impressed by the girl and says he should also start training because things have changed. The protagonist offers his cultivation technique and says if he starts now, he will be ahead of humanity. Shortly after, the reincarnated guy's friend cannot take it anymore and collapses to the floor all at once. Fallen on the ground, he complains that the workout was exhausting and that he needs to eat a lobster to recover. Suddenly, the young man's phone starts vibrating, letting him know he received a new message on the device. The message says their boss is Hunter and that if Gavin knows what is good for him, he better bring food. With an ironic smile on his face, the reincarnated guy seems completely unfazed by the threat. Without hesitating, the guy simply replies to the text and flat out calls them idiots. He thinks that in his past life Hunter did not live there, and that the timeline seems to have changed a bit. At the other house, one of the henchmen asks the boss if this Gavin guy has replied to the message yet. The guy grabs his phone and announces he replied, and Hunter asks what the kid said. The henchman says he called him an idiot, and at this Hunter spits out his drink in pure rage. Furious, the man yells that the guy is asking for it and orders his brothers to grab their weapons. The scene takes us back to the front of the protagonist's mansion, completely blanketed in snow. Xenia's mother complains that the food is going to run out, and her daughter says Zach is recovering, but will come to finish Gavin off. The woman then remembers that the guy bought a lot of supplies before the apocalypse began. The redhead confirms it and says she remembers dozens of trucks dropping things off at his place. The mother wonders if he knew about the disaster, but Xenia says not even the authorities saw it coming. With an evil smile, the older woman says that if Zach does not show up, they cannot let those supplies go to waste. The girl tells her mother not to worry because she knows how to handle him and will make him bring everything over. Meanwhile, Hunter and his group arrive at the guy's mansion, ready to break into the place. But through the security monitor, Yaniel warns that there is someone outside the house. With a smile, the reincarnated guy says not to panic because it is just Hunter and his crew. Outside, the group boss yells for the guy to open the door immediately so they can come in. With his arms crossed, the young man answers calmly that they are not welcome and tells him to get lost. The man gets angry and threatens to break the door down, saying it will be too late for him to beg for mercy. The protagonist then says he has a filthy mouth and offers to wash it out for the man. With that, he presses a button and blasts a stream of freezing water at the group, who scream from the cold. Hunter orders them to break down the door, but his henchmen complain they are freezing and cannot do it. Because of that, Hunter's group leaves frozen solid, and the boss swears the guy is still going to pay for that. Watching the scene on the monitor, Yaniel starts laughing and tells those fools to freeze to the very end. The protagonist points out that 7 days have already passed, and that they will head out today, which confuses his friend. With a confident smile, the guy reveals it is almost time for more meteors to fall from the sky. Yaniel gets excited about the meteor shower, and suddenly his friend's phone gets a text message. He sees it as a notification from Xenia Scott and gets annoyed that this girl is contacting him. The ex-girlfriend's text asks if he is there and says she wants to talk to him for a bit. At this, his classmate grabs the phone and throws it back, yelling that she is an idiot and can talk to a wall. In the other house, the girl's mother asks her daughter if the guy has replied to her text yet. The redhead says not to worry because he must be thrilled and will definitely text back. But half an hour later, she is still staring at her screen and realizes he has not answered any messages. This irritates the young woman, and she wonders why that fool still hasn't replied after so much time. Meanwhile, Hunter and his group shiver from the cold, and the boss complains he barely survived out there. Angry, he swears that next time he will bust the door down and throw him naked into the snow to freeze. 2 hours pass and Xenia's mother asks again, but the daughter yells that he did not answer. The older woman says he must have his pride, and the girl decides to send a voice message. With a seductive voice, she asks how he is doing and if the weather has changed much where he is. The voice memo then arrives on the protagonist's phone, and he watches the screen closely. With an ironic smile, he figures she wants to put on an act and decides to play along since he is bored. Without hesitating, the guy replies with a voice memo and asks if she is missing daddy. The redhead thinks he is still the same, and her mother tells her to hurry up and ask him for food. But upon hearing the message, both of them are completely shocked by the guy's response. Furious, the girl throws her phone on the floor and screams that the kid is an absolute scoundrel. In the group chat, Anlu announces she will collect excess food to hand out to the community. The reincarnated guy figures she is trying to scam everyone, but doubts many will fall for that trap. Yaniel then tells his friend that it is already completely dark outside the mansion. The protagonist says it is time and tells the two girls to get ready to head out with them. He figures he does not know where the meteor will land, and that having more people increases the chance of catching it. The group of four steps outside for the first time and complains that it is freezing out there since the apocalypse began. The young man warns that 2 meteors will fall and that everyone should dive as soon as they spot one. Nearby, a man with a megaphone announces that the committee is gathering supplies for the neighborhood. Aunt Liu then says the food they grabbed is gone and that she needs more for her starving grandson. With an annoyed look, the protagonist's friend says that woman has absolutely no shame. At this, one of her henchmen spots the reincarnated guy and tells the director that it is the Gavin kid. With an evil smile, she rejoices that they finally caught him since he refused to open his door earlier. The woman's group then surrounds the 4 of them, and Aunt Liu yells for the protagonist to stop right there. With a calm and peaceful expression, the young man simply asks if there happens to be a problem. The woman accuses him of hoarding several truckloads of supplies in his house, saying she saw it all. With an ironic smile on his face, the reincarnated guy confidently confirms that this is absolutely true. Aunt Lu celebrates and tells him to cooperate and move all those supplies over to the neighborhood committee. But the guy asks why he would do that, and the woman says it is in order for him to set an example. Out of patience, the young man says his supplies are none of her business, and the woman questions his attitude. He then asks who she is to lecture him, and if it is her business whether he improves or not. The woman calls him insolent and condemns him, but the guy tells her to go ahead and calls his group over. With that, her henchmen surround him with shovels and block him from leaving the area with his group of friends. Aunt Liu threatens him, saying that if he does not hand over the supplies today, he will not leave there at all. Suddenly, the protagonist's friend loses his temper and lands a hard slap across the woman's face. Fallen on the ground, she screams in shock and orders her men to grab the two for daring to hit her. At this, little Sixie points at the sky and announces that the meteor they were waiting for has finally arrived. The reincarnated guy yells to his group and tells them to go catch the meteor right now without wasting time. But the woman's henchmen surround them again and say no one there has permission to leave. Unfazed, the protagonist steps forward, knocks two men down with a single blow, and tells them to get lost. One of the meteors heads straight for Yaniel, and he celebrates that his big chance is finally here. But the light hits him hard and throws him to the ground with a massive impact, leaving him dazed on the spot. Meanwhile, little Sixie watches the second meteor glowing intensely in the night sky. The reincarnated guy's friend is shocked and wonders why the meteor is flying in her direction. With that, the light hits the little girl squarely and wraps her in a powerful, bright aura. The protagonist's classmate runs over to her and worriedly asks if little Sixie is okay. The little girl says she is fine and that it feels like the meteor just went right into her body. Suddenly, the other young woman looks at the sky and screams that another meteor is heading their way. Without hesitating, the protagonist yells to his group, and everyone sprints toward the meteor. Fallen on the ground, Aunt Liu screams that they hit an old lady and questions if there is no law anymore. Suddenly, the meteor crashes into the ground with a huge impact, blasting everyone back with the explosion. His friend asks why that one fell, and the guy says the ones that hit the ground are special items. As they approach the crater, they find a glowing object, and Yaniel asks what that is. The reincarnated guy picks it up and says it is a red spiritual fluid, meaning they found something good. He explains that the item's main effect is that, upon consumption, it boosts resistance to the cold. The group celebrates because that is perfect for the apocalypse, and the protagonist calls them back, but the woman and her henchmen surround them again and demand a box of noodles just to let them walk away. With a look of disdain and disgust, the young man simply turns around and calls them absolute idiots. At that, the woman decides to gather supplies from other houses and says she will deal with him later. The scene cuts, and we see the front of the mansion with an alert about the ice disaster and rescues. Suddenly, the power in the house goes out, and the TV shuts off, leaving Yaniel scared in the dark. The guy says it is normal since the power grid got overloaded, but they have enough energy for 100 years. The young woman worries about the people outside who do not have heaters and might not survive. Her classmate says it is the apocalypse and they cannot save everyone, and the girl agrees with him. The protagonist then approaches little Zixi and asks how she feels after the meteor hit. With a smile, the little girl says she does not feel much, but that she is much lighter now than before. Surprised, he asks if that is all, and the little girl confidently confirms it to the guy. The young man then asks her to try the body strengthening technique he taught her. Seeing that her physical strength did not improve, he deduces that the ability is not related to physical talent. He asks if new memories popped up like sword techniques or magic, but she instantly denies it. The guy finds it strange and says they will have to figure out what her ability is little by little. With that, he grabs the spiritual fluid and tells everyone to share it so they will not have to worry about the cold. Yaniel then takes a small cup and chugs the entire contents of the red liquid all at once. He feels a warm current, and the protagonist says it does not block the cold entirely but prevents freezing. In the other house, Xenia's mother complains about the cold and says her old bones will freeze soon. Her daughter asks her to hold on, but the woman gets desperate and says they will not make it if Zack does not come. Angry, the raid head says he is almost healed and that when he gets there, she will make him finish Gavin off. Suddenly, her mother notices something strange outside, and the girl asks what is wrong. The mother then points to the guy's house and says his lights are still on, which irritates the girl. With that, the older woman deduces that the kid was well prepared and has backup generators. Holding her head, the raid head gets angry that he is still living so comfortably in the middle of the apocalypse. But her mother calms her down and tells her to contact the guy again to get something out of him and improve their situation. With a seductive voice, the girl sends a message and asks what he is up to with the neighborhood's power. The scene then cuts and takes us back to the front of the protagonist's mansion, fully lit up. The guy grabs his phone and, with a smile, realizes Xenia must be going through hard times again. With that, he snaps a picture of his table full of food and says he is going to show her how he is living. In the other house, the girl celebrates that he replied, and her mother rushes over to see the message. The reincarnated guy says he was bored and set up a table full of food for them to eat. The two of them start watering at the mouth, and the young woman complains that she is even hungrier now, and he still has so much food. Because of this, her mother says that no matter what happens, they need to make the guy share his food. The ex-girlfriend then sends another text asking how he still has so much food when they have already eaten everything. Excited, the two see that he replied and hurry to read the young man's new message. But he simply says he gets it, and that now he is going to eat, and does not want to talk to her anymore. Furious, the girl throws her phone on the floor and screams that the fool is doing this all on purpose. Laying on the sofa, the protagonist thinks that the residents in the neighborhood are also losing their patience. In the group, a man says he is starving and is going to go out to find food, and another asks if he can handle it. The guy thinks that going out now is asking to not survive, because the temperature is already at -90 degrees. With that, the neighbor decides to go out alone, and the others wish him luck and tell him not to take risks. Meanwhile, Hunter's group gathers around a fire and complains that their food is gone. The girls say they need a plan and cannot just sit around waiting for the worst to happen. The group boss then stands up and says it is too cold and dangerous for them to go out right now. With an evil smile, he mentions Aunt Liu is gathering supplies and that they are going to rob her. At the woman's house, she feeds her grandson with the food she took and says she has plenty of stuff, but the boy is selfish and says his grandma cannot eat because all that food is just for him. With a smile, the woman agrees and says she will not eat and that it is all for him to enjoy. Suddenly, loud knocks on their door startle the woman, and she wonders who could be there at this hour. Outside, Hunter and his henchmen, armed with bats, demand she open the door for them. The woman is completely terrified and wonders why the thug is at her house. Outside, Hunter yells for the woman to open the door, or he will bust it down himself with his bat. Desperate, Aunt Liu tells her grandson to hide all the food they managed to take from the other houses. Out of patience, the man kicks the door open and says if she does not open it, he is coming in anyway. Upon entering, his henchman spots the food and tells the boss about the massive stash of supplies. With an evil smile on his face, Hunter simply gives his men the order to take it all, but the woman tries to stop them, saying she is the head of the committee and that this is illegal. The man then mocks her, asking if those things are truly hers since she scammed everyone to get them. With that, one of the henchmen shoves her aside and starts grabbing all the boxes of food. Angry, the woman yells that she is going to fight them and charges at the group with pure fury. But another henchman throws her to the floor and tells her to get lost and stop getting in the way of their work. Suddenly, her grandson grabs one of the boxes and screams that it is all his and that he will finish them all off. The henchman gets annoyed by the brat and hits him with a strike, knocking him to the floor instantly. Seeing this, the woman screams desperately for her beloved grandson who just got attacked. Hunter says they should not leave empty-handed and orders them to take the wooden furniture to use as firewood. The group then leaves taking everything, and the woman hugs her grandson, calling them monsters. In the other house, Zinnia's mother tells her to try again because men get weak around cute girls. With a seductive smile, the girl sends a message saying she misses him and invites him over to see her. With a victorious smile, she celebrates that the guy replied with a simple and direct, "All right." The redhead says he is still the same and that it only takes a few words to make him do what she wants. Shortly after, the two arrive at the mansion, and the girl knocks on the door, calling for him to open it. But from inside, the protagonist asks who they are while playing on his handheld console. The ex-girlfriend identifies herself, saying she is Xenia Scott with an excited smile on her face. With a surprised look, the guy asks what on earth she is doing over there at his house. The young woman says she came to see him and begs him to open up because she is practically freezing to death. The young man then asks why he should open the door and who told her to come over. She replies that it was him and that he said "alright" in his text to her earlier. With an ironic smile, the reincarnated guy says she must have misread it and tells her to look again. The girl then grabs her phone and, with a surprised expression, gets ready to read the text. On the screen, she sees that the full reply was "alright for your butt," and is left completely speechless. Angry, the redhead screams and asks if he is messing with her and whether or not he is going to open the door. Laying on the sofa, the protagonist replies with a smile and says that he absolutely is not opening it. Angry, the girl kicks the door and tells him to wait because she is still going to get her revenge for everything. As she leaves, the redhead yells that she will get back at him and that he will meet a terrible end for what he did. She complains she cannot even get inside and decides she will expose the guy to Aunt Liu from the committee. At the woman's house, she hugs her grandson, who complains he is freezing and starving. With a determined look, the older woman says she will find something for him to eat right now. At that point, her phone starts ringing, and she gets ready to answer the call she just got. On the other line, Xenia snitches on him, and the woman says she has been wanting to teach that kid a lesson for a while. In the group chat, the neighbor says he barely survived out there, and another laments that you either go out or starve. Lying in bed, the reincarnated guy thinks that the true test of humanity has finally arrived. With a serious look on his face, the protagonist seems to be thinking about what is going to happen next. In the group, Aunt Liu exposes him and says he is the only one with supplies, and the others beg for help. Phone in hand, the guy notices the woman is trying to turn the whole complex against him. In the chat, the woman accuses him of having no compassion and demands he hand his supplies over to the committee. With the phone in her hand, she keeps watching the messages from the other residents in the complex. The young man remembers that in his past life he got played, and this time he will not tolerate anything. The woman curses at him, says he cares about no one, and rallies everyone to go take his supplies. The protagonist's friend is on the phone with his dad and tells him not to worry for now. The reincarnated guy steps closer and asks his classmate what is going on with him. Yaniel says his dad called and told him chaos has taken over, with lots of people looting. Holding a cup, the guy says that is normal and things are only going to get worse from here on out. His classmate worries about his parents, and the protagonist asks if he wants to go check on them right now. Excited, he agrees, since with the spiritual fluid the cold is no longer a threat to him outside. With a smile, the young man says he will tag along and that he has a snowmobile to make their trip easier. Suddenly, loud knocks on the door interrupt them, and the guy wonders who it is this time. On the monitor, he sees that Aunt Liu is back, and this time she brought a lot of people with her. Outside, a man points out that his house has power, and another sees steam coming from the roof. A woman celebrates because it seems the guy has plenty of supplies and they will be saved. With an ironic smile, the protagonist says they are there for the food, but they can keep dreaming. Aunt Liu yells and demands he hand over the supplies since it was a decision made by all the residents. Through the monitor, the young man mocks her and asks if those few residents represent the entire neighborhood. The woman gets angry and says that as the committee director she certainly does represent them, and orders him to open the door. With an ironic smile, the protagonist then challenges them to come in on their own if they are capable. With that, the lady reveals she came prepared and brought a locksmith to pick the lock. The other residents cheer and are already dreaming of the warm food they will find inside. But the locksmith fails to open it and says the lock is a special, heavily reinforced type. The reincarnated guy laughs at the situation because the security on his door is comparable to a bank vault. The woman then gets angry and yells at the locksmith, who says he will try to pick the lock one more time. The protagonist gets tired of playing around and tells his friend Yaniel to turn on the house's power. At this, the locksmith takes a massive shock and screams for help while being electrocuted at the door. With the man down, the woman gets furious and yells that the guy dared to electrify his front door. Unfazed, she announces Plan B and orders her men to use a log to ram the door open. With a furious expression, the older woman yells for them to break it down with everything they have. With a loud crash, the men slam the log against the door but fail to break it open. Yaniel comments that they have no shame at all, thinking they have a right to his supplies. The protagonist says the apocalypse is a test of character, and some will cross the line to survive. Outside, one of the men collapses from exhaustion and says he cannot take the physical strain anymore. Everyone is exhausted and realizes the door is made of a special alloy, and they will not get through. With an evil smile, the guy says it is their turn now, and that he is going to give them something gross. Excited about the plan, Yaniel presses a button on the control panel and prepares for action. The woman screams for them not to give up because she refuses to believe they cannot break it open. Suddenly, a brown liquid is sprayed out and hits the woman squarely right in her face. Everyone gets hit by the liquid and wonders in shock what kind of disgusting stuff that is. Angry, the woman screams and accuses the guy of throwing water on them in the middle of this freezing cold. But one of the men notices the smell and says it is a gross mixture, not water. Watching everything on the monitor, the young man laughs and tells the old lady to keep cursing because there is more where that came from. Disgusted and freezing, the men leave and complain they never should have listened to Aunt Liu. In another house, Hunter's group finds out the woman's plan failed and everyone came back filthy. Hunter comments that the guy has some tricks up his sleeve, and one of the girls says this proves the supplies are real. The other young woman then says they cannot give up, and if they get inside, they will have food to live on. Hunter says he has a history with the guy and will definitely finish him off if he prepares beforehand. Meanwhile, in the other house, Senia's mother complains that Aunt Liu's plan failed and she is freezing. With that, the girl decides to grab her phone to call Zach one more time and beg for help. On the other end of the line, the blonde guy answers angrily, and she begs him to pick her up because she is so cold. But Zach yells that he cannot even save himself and tells her to get lost before hanging up in her face. The redhead then explains to her mother that he is also in trouble and cannot help them right now. The older woman panics and says they need to go out and find food or they will perish. But the daughter warns that if they step out into the intense cold, their end will come even faster. Desperate, the young woman asks what they will do since they cannot just sit around waiting for the worst. The mother then tells her to keep begging Gavin because he is the only one who can save them. The scene then cuts and shows the front of the protagonist's mansion, totally heated and secure. The reincarnated guy reads Xenia's text apologizing and asking what she needs to do for him to forgive her. With an evil smile on his face, the young man simply replies, telling the girl to call him daddy. Upon getting the message, the redhead becomes completely furious at the guy's bold response. Her mother questions her, and the girl complains that the protagonist is taking his taunts too far. But the older woman tells her to call him that because she has nothing to lose in this situation. She even insists that staying alive is more important than dignity, and that she must obey. With that, the young woman decides to trick him to get inside, promising she will teach him a lesson once she is in. The protagonist then receives the message saying daddy and is satisfied with her response. The girl celebrates that he texted back and tells her mother he will definitely let them in now. But the guy replies that he does not have a rebellious daughter like her and calls her a fool in the text. Completely furious, the redhead screams and starts cursing the protagonist for tricking her again. Meanwhile, Hunter's group gears up, saying this time they are definitely going to get him. With a determined look on his face, the group boss simply gives the order for them to move out. The scene then shows the group of men trekking through the snow toward the guy's mansion. On the monitor, Yaniel spots the group and warns his friend that Hunter and his henchmen are back. The reincarnated guy says this time he is going to hurt them, so they do not think he is an easy target. Outside, Hunter points and gives the young man one last chance to open the door for them. With a hot drink in hand, the protagonist just calls him an idiot with a smile on his face. The group then stacks a pile of firewood at the door, and Hunter warns him that his chance is over. With that, Hunter orders his henchmen to pour gasoline on the firewood to burn the guy alive. Yaniel panics, but the protagonist says the house is fireproof and they will not succeed. The group boss then tosses a lighter and tells Gavin to just wait and burn to the end. With the wood blazing, the group just watches, waiting for the fire to spread through the mansion. One of the henchmen then points out something is wrong, because there is no movement at all inside. Another man realizes the fire did no damage and that the house truly is fireproof. Angry, Hunter orders his men to grab a hammer drill to break through the wall. One of the henchmen then grabs the drill and, with an evil smile, gears up for the attack. The man starts drilling into the wall, and the boss says as soon as he gets in, he will teach the kid a lesson. Little Sixie warns that bad men are breaking the wall, but the young man calms her down and says everything is fine. The protagonist says it is hunting time and calls Yaniel over to start teaching those fools a lesson. Armed with bows and arrows, the two get ready, and the reincarnated guy's friend wonders if they are powerful. The guy figures that with the apocalypse, firearms will become useless, which is why he trained with a bow. Outside, the henchman cannot drill through the wall and wonders how he failed. He then warns his boss that something is wrong, and he cannot make any progress with the drill. Looking into the hole, the man says he cannot drill any further, because there is something hard inside the wall. They then discover it is a steel plate and realize the kid reinforced the entire house. Hunter gets furious and yells that it is impossible for them to break through that barrier. Suddenly, an arrow hits the man with the drill dead on, knocking him to the ground instantly. Multiple arrows start raining down, and Hunter screams for everyone to take cover because the kid is shooting. With pure rage, the group boss swears that if he does not finish Gavin off, his name is not Hunter, but he is also hit by an arrow and screams in pain while his men flee in desperation. The henchmen help him escape and run back to base, leaving the others behind. The ones left behind beg not to be abandoned and plead for the boss to save them too. The reincarnated guy watches the scene and notes that 3 were left behind and the rest fled. He warns that with the cold, the ones who ran away will not last long, and his friend asks about the 3. The men beg not to be left to perish and blame Hunter for forcing them into this. Ignoring their pleas, the young man simply turns around and tells his crew to head back inside. His classmate asks why he left them, and Gavin says Hunter will never come back and they will freeze. Yaniel understands that Hunter got hit and that this will cause discord and break up the group for good. The abandoned henchmen are relieved because, luckily, the protagonists did not end their lives. One of them panics because they are wounded and will not last long, and tells the other to call the boss. He then calls the boss and begs him to come back and save them because they are badly hurt. The henchman replies that they are still in front of the guy's house, but the call suddenly drops. His partner asks what the boss said, and the man reports in shock that he hung up on him. At this, the other man gets furious and wonders if the boss really left them there to meet their end. Angry, he yells that he risked his life and has now been left behind, and curses the boss. The other realizes their only hope now is to beg the protagonist for help. With that, they start screaming and pleading for help, even offering to become his servants. The scene then takes us to the mansion's terrace while the men continue to beg outside. Meanwhile, a henchman tries to pull the arrow out of Hunter's back, who screams in pain from the tug. The two girls watch the scene and comment that his plan failed against the guy once again. They then realize the protagonist is much stronger than they thought and that they misjudged him. Angry, Hunter yells for the two of them to stop staring and boil some water to clean his wound. One of the young women then rushes to say he shouldn't worry because they will take care of everything now. In the kitchen, one of the girls worries because it is obvious the boss is no match for Gavin. The other says they need a plan B because they cannot pin all their hopes on him. Her friend gets desperate because they have no food and are trapped with nowhere to go now. With a determined look, the other concludes that the safest place in the neighborhood is the guy's house. The friend says they were classmates and that if they apologize, maybe he will not let them perish. Outside, the protagonist and his friend get ready to head out on their new snowmobiles. With his helmet on, the young man announces they are going to check on his friend's parents now. From the window, Xenia and her mother see them leaving, and the older woman is shocked by the snowmobiles. Full of rage, the redhead swears she is still going to take everything the protagonist has for herself. The two ride through the snow, and the reincarnated guy's friend comments that the streets are completely empty. The guy then spots a supermarket and decides they should take a look inside the place. With that, the two step off their vehicles and prepare to go in and check the condition of the market. Inside, they find everything torn apart and realize the supermarket has been completely looted. He says it is normal since it has been a month and everyone's food ran out, but something is watching them from afar. Suddenly, the protagonist's friend yells desperately for him to be very careful in there. but the protagonist hits the man with a precise kick to the face, knocking him down with a single blow. Daniel then points his weapon at the man, who begs him not to act rashly with that. Fallen on the floor, the man says he had no choice because he has a family to feed and cannot survive otherwise. The protagonist's friend is shocked and asks, with a surprised expression, if he has a family. With that, the man calls his family over, and a pregnant woman along with 2 children appear. The scene then shows the woman with a sad look and her 2 small kids by her side. The man explains that they ate all their food and had no other choice but to attack. The reincarnated guy then questions why he didn't ask for food instead of attacking them like that. With a guilty expression on his face, the man cannot answer and is left speechless. The woman then kneels down with her kids and begs them to let them walk away in peace. The protagonist simply turns around and tells his friend to come with him to another place. As they walk, Daniel asks his classmate what that strange smell in the supermarket is. With a serious look, the guy replies that it is the smell of a mess, and his friend wonders where it is coming from. They then come across several remains on the ground, and the reincarnated guy's classmate is shocked. The young man says it was just as he thought, and his friend cannot handle the scene and ends up throwing everything up. With rage in his eyes, Daniel swears he is going to finish those jerks off for doing that, but Gavin questions if he is also going to take down the pregnant woman and the kids, and his friend says no. The guy explains that if he does anything to the man, the woman and the kids will have no way to survive. Daniel then realizes the family survived by hurting other people and calls them animals. The protagonist says that in the apocalypse, things like this will become more and more common for everyone. Shortly after, the 2 get back on their snowmobiles and head to Daniel's parents' house. Upon arriving, the guy notices the door is open, and his friend panics, calling out for his parents. Inside, a group of looters celebrates finding a lot of supplies in the house. Their leader praises the work and promises everyone extra chicken leg when they get back. One of the henchmen then asks what they will do with the 2 old folks they took hostage. With an evil smile on his face, the group boss simply gives the order to finish them off. One of the men points his weapon at Daniel's parents and prepares to follow the boss's order. Suddenly, the protagonist's friend shows up and yells desperately for them to stop everything. His mother then sees him and screams with all her might for her son to run and escape from there. Without hesitating, the thug fires and strikes the woman right in front of her terrified son. With his eyes filled with tears, the boy screams his mother's name in despair. His father then throws himself in front of the thug and yells for his son to run and get out of there, but the man calls him a fool and fires multiple times, striking the boy's father squarely. Terrified, Daniel screams in despair, seeing his parents attacked right in front of him. The thug then points his weapon and says he's going to send the whole family to the other side. But suddenly the protagonist appears and severs the man's arm with a sword strike. With his completely severed arm on the floor, the thug screams in pain, not understanding what happened. Gavin says it would be too easy to finish the boss off and that he deserves to freeze to the end. Terrified, the group leader begs for his life and asks the guy not to do anything. Ignoring his pleas, the young man kicks him and throws him out of the house. Out in the snow, the man begs not to freeze to death and asks for a quicker end. But in a matter of seconds, the man ends up completely frozen in the middle of the cold snow. Angry, Daniel wants revenge, and the protagonist tells him they should head to Mang Village. Upon arriving, they see Mang Village right ahead with several figures hanging around. The reincarnated guy then comments that it looks like the people in that place built a fortress. His friend says angrily that the people of that village have committed countless evil acts. Suddenly, other snowmobiles approach them at high speed through the snow. The protagonist is surprised to see that the people from that village also have snowmobiles. A man with a mohawk pulls up and asks them with an arrogant tone who they are. The guy replies that they came as guests, and the man questions who invited them. With a smile, the young man says the village chief, a certain Lee Sanchin, called them over. But the men draw their weapons and say he dares to lie, because the chief is not there. Before they could do anything, the 2 are hit in the head and fall to the ground instantly. We then see the protagonist and his friend firing and taking down another henchman in the group. From the top of the fortress, someone yells asking who is causing trouble down there. One of them gets angry seeing the fallen ones and wonders where the punk who invaded the village came from. Daniel says they cannot get inside and need to fall back to come up with a new attack plan. But the men from the fortress start firing and yell for the kid not to run away. Unfazed, the 2 speed up their snowmobiles and escape the area at top speed. Back at the mansion, the abandoned henchmen spot him and celebrate, thinking he returned. When they get back, they are surprised by how many people are waiting in front of their mansion. One of the men asks if he managed to get anything on his trip, and if he brought supplies for everyone. Angry, the protagonist tells everyone to get out of his way immediately and without hesitation. An older man questions if he found supplies for them because they are starving. The guy then sarcastically asks who said he was out looking for food for them. With that, the older man asks what he was doing out there if it was not to look for food. Out of patience, the young man shoves him and says it is none of his business what he does, telling him to leave. The older man gets angry, accuses him of disrespecting his elders, and calls him rude. A woman walks up and begs for supplies, but the reincarnated guy denies finding anything. She does not believe him and says she will search him to make sure he is not lying to them. The protagonist then shoves her forcefully away and tells her to get lost once and for all. His friend warns everyone to leave because they did not find anything and did not go out looking for them. But one of the men says that since he didn't find anything, they will take the snowmobiles to go look themselves. With a mocking smile, the young man questions the guy's audacity and calls him shameless. The woman then asks for food and reminds him that everyone says he's stocked up on a ton of supplies. The others agree and threaten him, saying they will sit at his door and will not leave without food. Out of patience, the guy says he will not let it bother him and tells his friend to go inside the house. But the woman grabs him and screams that he cannot leave without giving food to all of them first. The protagonist then strikes her and throws her forcefully to the ground, leaving her completely dazed. Fallen on the floor, she accuses him of assaulting a woman and threatens to curse him every single day. The older man calls him shameless and questions if he is a real man for hitting a woman. The woman then demands he apologize and help her inside the house so she can recover from the blow. With a cold look, the guy extends his hand to the woman lying on the ground at the entrance. With a victorious smile, she says that is more like it and asks him to help her up and make a meal. But instead of helping her, the young man hits her with a hard slap to the face with all his might. Holding her face, the woman screams in shock and asks what on earth he is doing to her. With an evil smile, he says he is going to grant her wish since she said he assaulted her. He then begins hitting her multiple times, and the others just watch the scene terrified. The woman screams desperately and begs the protagonist to stop hitting her right now. With an ironic smile, he asks if she thinks he will stop just because she asked. Lying on the floor, the woman screams for help and tells them not to just stand there watching. One of the men accuses him of assault and rallies everyone to team up and finish the guy off. Another man then grabs him and asks what kind of man he is to attack a woman. With a cold look, the protagonist simply says that since it is like that, he will attack him too. Without hesitating, the young man hits him with a precise elbow, leaving him completely dazed. Next, he hits him with 2 more powerful blows, knocking him to the floor defenseless. The others are completely shocked by the scene and cannot believe what they are seeing. Grabbing his collar, the man begs the guy to stop hitting him because he was wrong. Angry, the protagonist says they asked for it and tells everyone to get lost for good. As they walk away, the group complains that the guy is going to let them meet their end and has no conscience. Once inside the house, he sees the group of neighbors complaining and demanding his supplies and snowmobiles. With an ironic smile, the young man wonders if those people are all delusional. Without thinking twice, the guy jumps into the conversation and asks if he happens to owe them anything. The neighbors get angry and say he does not care if they survive or perish in the apocalypse. With a mocking smile, he replies and asks why he should care since he is not their father. Amla gets angry and proposes that they all kick him out of the community and split his supplies. The reincarnated guy remembers that in his past life they caused a lot of trouble and swears to teach them a lesson. Suddenly, his cell phone starts ringing, and he gets ready to answer the call he just received. He sees it as an unknown number and wonders who it could be before picking up. On the other end of the line, a voice asks if he is Gavin, and the guy confidently confirms. The man then asks if the young man knows who he is, but the protagonist denies it instantly. With an air of superiority, the man introduces himself as Lee Sanchin from Mang Village and taunts him. With an ironic smile, the guy answers that he did not expect it to be a fool like him. Furious, the man gets angry and asks what the heck the kid just said to him. The protagonist tells him to stop acting tough and state what he wants once and for all. The village chief then praises him for having the guts to end the lives of his men. With a mocking smile, the young man asks if he called just to praise him for that. The man gets angry and threatens him, saying that for messing with him, the kid can already consider himself finished. But the protagonist cuts him off and says his friend's life matters, and he is going to avenge him. Angry, the village chief asks where the kid is, and the young man gives his exact location. With a confident smile, the village chief swears he will make him drop to his knees and call him grandpa. On the other end of the line, the protagonist dares him and says if he does not show up, he will be his grandson. The man then calls his henchmen, who step forward and ask what he wants at the moment. With a determined look, the village chief orders them to gather the men to head out to the location. He also warns them to bring weapons because the 2 punks are armed as well. Meanwhile, the reincarnated guy calls his friend to head out, and his classmate asks where they are going. With a serious look on his face, the protagonist replies that they are going to raid the enemy's lair. The 2 then rev up their snowmobiles and speed through the thick snow. The young man then asks his friend if the place they are approaching was a police station. Yanil confirms and says it was a city-level police station before the apocalypse began. With a determined look, the guy says they are going to find some weapons in that place. They step off their vehicles and prepare to enter the abandoned police station. Without wasting time, the protagonist busts open the glass door with a strong, precise kick. Inside, they find several frozen cops, and his classmate is shocked by the scene. The reincarnated guy laments that the disaster came too fast and the government had no time to react. They then reach a door, and the protagonist's friend announces that this is the weapons depot. But when he tries to open it, Yanil realizes the door is locked, and they will not be able to get in. Holding a weapon, the young man tells him to step back and says he will take care of it for them. He then fires several times at the door's lock to try to bust it open and get inside. With the door open, they walk into the depot and find several crates of weapons and supplies. Yanil celebrates excitedly, saying they hit the jackpot with so many weapons. The protagonist is then surprised to see they even have sniper rifles in there. His friend calls him over and shows him a box full of detonators for them to use on their mission. The guy says that will be useful and with a smile, tells his classmate to grab all the detonators. Using his power, the young man collects everything and says they grabbed it all and it is time to leave. But suddenly his friend warns him with a scared look that someone is arriving at the location. With an evil smile on his face, he realizes they were not the only ones looking for weapons. The scene then shows another group of men arriving at the police station's weapons depot. One of the henchmen warns the boss that there is someone inside, and they brace for action. With an ironic smile, the group boss notices someone got there before they did. One of the henchmen then announces that the depot is empty and all the weapons have been taken. The group boss turns to the two of them and asks if they were the ones who took all the weapons. With an ironic smile and open arms, the protagonist asks if it looks like they took them. The man agrees they do not and says he is going to search them to make sure they are not lying. With a serious look on his face, the reincarnated guy refuses to be searched by the group boss. The man then introduces himself and says that if the guy has no weapons, he will let him walk away in peace. Another henchman taunts him and asks if he is looking for a beating by being so arrogant. Without saying a word, the young man hits him with a powerful kick and tells him to get lost once and for all. Angry, the group boss says he tried to play nice and orders his men to finish the two of them off. The henchmen then charge at the two boys to carry out their boss's order. With a weapon in his hand, the protagonist says it seems he was way too nice to them. One of the men panics when he sees the weapon and accuses him of lying about not taking anything. Ignoring the accusations, the young man says with a cold look that he is going to send him to his maker. The henchman then panics and begs him not to act rashly, saying they can talk this out, but the reincarnated guy fires without hesitating and ends the man's story, dropping him instantly. With the weapon smoking, the guy says the man is shameless and that he is tired of playing nice. The others are shocked and wonder if he actually dares to end someone's life right there. The young man then fires again and hits another henchman, who falls to the floor with no chance to fight back. One of them screams in terror and tells the others to run because the kid really does dare to shoot. With precise aim, the protagonist fires and takes down two more men trying to run away. Terrified, the boss drops to his knees and begs for his life, saying he messed with the wrong person. With a look of disdain, the guy simply calls him an idiot for underestimating him. Next, he fires and hits the group boss squarely right in the middle of his forehead. With all the men down, the reincarnated guy turns around and calls his friend to leave the place. Meanwhile, the chief of Mang village and his group head to the location thirsty for revenge. One of the men asks if they will spare the women, and the chief says they can take them. Another henchman says he knows the rules, and whoever dares mess with the village will meet their end. With an evil smile on his face, the chief tells them to speed up because the trip will take a few hours. Nearby, the protagonist watches the group and notes that Mang village is powerful and it will be tough. But with a confident smile, he says most of their force is out, which makes this their chance. Upon arriving at Mang village, Yaniel notices the main gate is closed, making it hard to get inside. But with an evil smile on his face, the protagonist reveals they have dynamite to use. On top of the fortress, two men keep an eye on the area and brace themselves for whatever comes. Suddenly, one of the snowmobiles speeds forward, and one of the men wonders what that is. They are shocked to see the vehicle moving on its own and wonder if there is something on it. The scene then shows that the snowmobile is loaded with several sticks of dynamite. One of the men panics upon realizing it is dynamite and that they are in danger. With a massive explosion, the fortress gate is destroyed, and the two men are thrown back. Fallen on the ground, they wonder who did that and who dares to cause trouble in the village. With that, the protagonist and his friend ride their snowmobiles forward into the fortress. One of the men spots them and yells to the others that it is the two kids, ordering them to finish them off. With his weapon drawn, the reincarnated guy prepares to fire at the men in front of him. Without hesitating, he fires and takes down the two men who are on top of the fortress with precision. With the two henchmen down, the boys move forward and press the attack on the fortress. Suddenly, more armed men show up and yell at them to stop, or they will meet their end. But the protagonist is faster and takes down two more men with his flawless aim. One of them panics and yells at the others to warn the village chief about the attack. The young man then fires at the man's leg, leaving him on the ground unable to move. The henchman begs for his life, claiming he is just a good citizen and not one of the boss's men. With the weapon pointed at him, the guy asks where all the boss's supplies are stored. The man then points to a shed and says the warehouse is where all the supplies are kept. Without thinking twice, the reincarnated guy fires and ends the life of the man who helped him. They then reach the warehouse and find a massive shed full of crates and supplies. Yaniel is shocked by the amount, and his friend says now all of that is theirs for the taking. Using his power, the young man collects all the supply crates and stores them in his space. After grabbing everything, they hop on their snowmobiles and flee the scene at top speed. The protagonist's friend celebrates and says the village chief is going to be furious when he finds out. The guy says he will teach them a lesson first, and little by little he will wear down the village's power. Meanwhile, the chief and his group arrive, and a henchman notes that the place is buried under the snow. Angry, the man realizes they were tricked, and his phone suddenly starts ringing. He answers the call, and on the other end, a voice informs him about the attack on the fortress. The village chief is completely shocked to hear that his base was attacked and looted. Desperate, he jumps on his snowmobile and yells for his men to race back to the village. Upon returning, they find the fortress gate completely destroyed by the explosion. The group boss drops his jaw and wonders how that could have possibly happened. Full of rage, he swears he will never forgive the guy and that he will make him meet a slow and painful end. He then orders his men to find out where the two kids live within 3 days. The scene then takes us back to the front of the protagonist's completely secure mansion. Lying on the sofa, the young man gets a message from an old classmate asking to meet up. Without thinking twice, the guy replies to the girl's text, saying he has no time for that. Suddenly, the mansion's doorbell rings, and he wonders who it could be at this hour. On the monitor, Yaniel is shocked to see that the two girls from the restaurant actually came over. Outside, they ask the protagonist to open the door because they want to talk to him. He then opens the door and, with a serious look, asks what the two of them are doing there. With an awkward smile, one of them says they simply came to see him for a bit. The guy asks if they are done looking, and the two are confused by the question. Giving them no chance to answer, the young man simply tells them to get lost and shuts the door. One of them screams desperately and asks him to wait because they need his help. With a seductive smile, she reminds him they are classmates and should help each other in the apocalypse. The protagonist then asks ironically what they could possibly do to help him. The young woman says they will do anything, and that he can do whatever he wants with the two of them. With a victorious smile, he says from now on he will be the master, and they will be his servants. The two celebrate, saying they love the idea and are eager to get inside the house. But the guy tells him to go out and find him something to eat in the neighborhood first. With an ironic smile, he asks if they have a problem following the master's orders. One of them panics and says that if they go out in the snow, they will definitely freeze out there. Out of patience, the young man slaps her and asks if she dares to disobey her master. Holding her face, the girl is shocked and speechless at the protagonist's attitude. The two then beg, asking how they are supposed to find food for him outside the neighborhood, but the reincarnated guy hits her again and orders the two of them to go right now, without complaining. With a shocked look, one of the girls asks if he is serious about that order. He calls them useless trash and says if they cannot even find food, they are not worthy of anything. Angry, the two turn around and walk away, while the guy just watches them from the door. One of them complains that if they had supplies, they would not have gone to him, and the other says they underestimated him. The girl with glasses worries because Hunter will not last long since he is out of food. The other says they cannot leave him because they still need his protection and tells them to head back. Upon returning, one of the boss's henchmen asks the two of them where the heck they went. With an awkward look, one of them replies that they went to look for the protagonist to help them. The girl then lies, saying the guy hurt him and they went to confront him about it. With a furious look on his face, the group boss asks what the young man said to them. She lies and says he was arrogant, refused to offer compensation, and even assaulted them. The other adds to the lie, saying the guy is a monster, and that if they did not run, they would have been attacked. Full of rage, Hunter says they are mortal enemies, and that he will definitely finish him off. He then stands up and calls his men to go with him, and one of them asks where to. The scene then shows several residents screaming in front of the mansion, demanding he open the door. On the monitor, Yaniel is shocked to see that more than half the neighborhood showed up at their door. With an ironic smile, the protagonist simply calls them a disorganized and powerless mob. A man calls him selfish and asks why he does not share his food with everyone. Yaniel gets angry and says he is going out to teach all those fools outside a lesson, but the reincarnated guy stops him and says there is no need to go out because he has a better plan. One of the neighbors calls him a coward and asks if he is going to hide in his house forever. The others scream that their supplies will run out and that he has angered the whole neighborhood now. Nearby, a henchman asks Hunter if he thinks the protagonist will come out of the house. With an evil smile, he says if the guy steps out, they will grab him, calling it a brilliant plan. One of the men calls him a heartless piece of trash and wonders what the difference is between him and a beast. Suddenly, the man is hit by a precise blast right in the middle of his forehead and falls instantly. Everyone is shocked and wonders what happened and how his head simply exploded. On the mansion's roof, the young man celebrates that the sniper rifle is really good and powerful. One of the men then spots him and yells that Gavin fired the shot and that he has a sniper. Holding the rifle, the protagonist warns them they push their luck and tells everyone to get lost. One of the men gets angry and accuses him of ending someone's life, saying that is a crime. A woman tells them not to be afraid because she doubts the guy can finish all of them off by himself. The group leader then orders everyone to charge because they are going to starve anyway, but before he could finish his sentence, the man is hit by a precise shot to the head. Terrified, the others start running, screaming that the guy is crazy and is actually attacking. Hunter's group watches the scene, and the boss wonders where the kid got a sniper rifle. Angry, he decides to pull back and tells his men they need a new plan right now. Suddenly, another group of men arrives in the neighborhood ready to start looting. Their boss says this is a wealthy neighborhood, and there is definitely a lot of supplies here. With a shovel on his shoulder, the man orders his henchmen to start searching every house for food. The The scene then takes us to the front of one of the neighborhood's mansions, covered in snow. Inside, Anliu asks her grandson if he is okay and why he is not saying anything. The boy complains he is starving and needs something to eat immediately. With an evil smile, the woman pulls out an ear of corn and says she hid some food. But the grandson complains, saying not even pigs would eat that, and that he wants to eat meat now. The grandmother tries to calm him down, saying there is no meat, but she will find something for him tomorrow. Angry, the boy throws the corn and screams that he wants to eat meat right now, no matter what. He then suggests that grandma cut off a piece of her own flesh for him to eat today. The woman says her meat is old and tough but promises she will find meat for him tomorrow. Suddenly, the door to their house is busted open with a hard kick, startling them both. One of the men spots the food and tells his boss they found what they were looking for. Scared, the woman asks who they are and what they are doing there in her house. The group boss says they are from the neighboring community, and are they looking for food? One of the henchmen then hits her with a strike and grabs the corn that was on the floor. Angry, the woman yells that they are from another community and that there is no law left for them. The man mocks her, saying law and order have collapsed and now power is what rules. Another henchman grabs her and demands she hand over all the food, but the woman says she has no more. With that, one of the men threatens her grandson and says if she does not speak up, he will meet his end. Desperate, the woman screams for them not to hurt her grandson and says grandma is there to save him. The boss then gets annoyed and tells her to stop stalling and hand over the food once and for all. The group boss then looks at the bag of supplies and asks if that is really all she has. The woman says it is everything they have and that their food ran out a long time ago. One of the men complains because he thought the rich neighborhood would have plenty of supplies for them. The group then leaves, and the boss orders them to move on to the next house in the neighborhood. With a look of despair on her face, the woman laments that the world has truly fallen into chaos. Her grandson complains that he does not want meat anymore, he just wants something to eat, and the grandma panics. The boy screams and asks what they are going to do, since she will let him starve to death now that she has nothing left. With a determined look, the woman swears to her grandson that she will not let him starve and that he will survive. At another house, the group boss asks a couple if they want their lives or the food. Terrified, they say they have nothing and have already been looted several times before. With an ironic smile, one of the men says that since it is like that, they have no other choice. With an axe in his hand, he gets ready to attack the couple, who ask what they are doing. The boss then states he never leaves empty-handed, and if there is no food, he will take an arm. Without hesitating, the man attacks and severely injures the young man's arm, making him scream in pain from the violent blow. In the neighborhood chat, a man cries for help, saying the people from the other community are there. At Hunter's house, one of the henchmen warns they cannot let others steal their territory. With a serious look, the group boss asks if they figured out where the invaders came from. The henchman explains they are migrant workers who took over the neighboring community. Another man points out they must be tough since leaving the community these days is asking to meet your end. Hunter stands up and says he is going to find them since they dared to invade his territory. But when he tries to stand, he feels a sharp pain in his leg and cannot move right. One of the henchmen then asks with concern if the boss is okay and what happened to him. He complains that his leg still hasn't healed since the last time the protagonist hurt him. Meanwhile, in the other house, Senia's mother warns her that thieves have invaded the community. The girl worries because, besides Hunter, they now have to deal with another dangerous group. Her mother then wonders if dropping Zach Young's name would help save them. But the daughter says no, because he is still dealing with his own problems and will take a while. Desperate, the older woman tells them to hide, and the girl agrees with the idea. But she soon panics and wonders where they can hide from the looters. As a last hope, the redhead decides to go to her room and text Gavin again. Yaniel warns his friend that people from another community have entered and asks if they should act. The protagonist says yes, but there is no rush, as they will come looking for them sooner or later. The scene then takes us to the front of the protagonist's mansion, fully lit and secure. He then receives a text from Xenia and wonders what kind of trouble she got into this time. Upon opening the message, he is shocked to see that the girl actually sent him a spicy photo. In the text, she asks if he likes what he sees and invites him to open his door for her. With an ironic smile on his face, the guy replies that yes, he definitely likes what he sees. The girl then offers to go over to his house so he can look as much as he wants. With a victorious smile, she thinks he finally fell for her charm and that she has him wrapped around her finger. But the young man replies that she does not need to, and since good things should be shared, he will do just that. The redhead is confused by the reply and wonders what on earth the guy means by that. With an evil smile, the protagonist simply taps his phone screen to share it. He then shares the girl's photo in the neighborhood chat group with all the residents. Her mother warns her in shock, asking why the guy posted her photo in everyone's group. In the chat, the neighbors comment on the picture and wonder if she is trading herself for supplies. Angry, the girl calls him and asks if he lost his mind for posting her photo in the group. With an ironic smile, the young man asks if she decided she wants her dignity back now. The redhead screams that because of this she will never speak to him again for the rest of her life. Holding a cup, the protagonist says mockingly that he could not ask for anything better than that. Furious, the girl throws her phone and swears he will regret humiliating her like that. Her mother then realizes the guy does not respond to any of her tactics and that they underestimated him. Suddenly, the group of looters arrives at their house and demands they open the door right now. Terrified, the older woman tells her daughter that the thieves from the other community are here. Outside, the group boss yells that if they do not open the door, he will break it down himself. The mother then panics and wonders what they will do since, if they do not give them food, they will take their arms. With no other choice, the raid head decides to get up and open the door because they can no longer hide. One of the henchmen complains that the family does not know what is good for them and orders the door busted. With a determined look, the group boss simply gives the order to break down the door, but before they could do anything, the door opens, and they are left confused by the situation. With a seductive smile, the girl invites them in for tea, saying she was expecting them. One of the looters comments to his boss that the girl who opened the door is quite pretty. The group leader finds the tea offer strange and asks if the young woman is not afraid of them. With a manipulative smile, she says they are not bad guys and were just forced by their circumstances. The blonde henchman likes the girl's smooth talking and says her words are like music to his ears. The boss finds it all very interesting and orders his men to step into the house with the redhead. Once inside the residence, she serves the man a cup of tea and calls him Brother Jew. But one of the henchmen comes back from the search and reports he only found one pack of instant noodles. The young woman explains that she and her mother have been starving for days and truly have nothing else. The group leader then states that the rule is clear, and if there is no food, they take an arm. Desperate, the girl reveals her boyfriend is Zach Young and that he will send supplies soon. The man is surprised by the information and asks if she really mentioned the dragon group's name. With a victorious smile, the raid head confirms it and says it is one of the biggest companies in the province. To her shock, the boss reveals that they are all migrant workers from that exact same group. With that, he grabs her and says that since she is Zach's woman, he wants to get a taste himself. Terrified, the girl panics and screams for the man not to do that to her under any circumstances. With a cold look, he gives her two options. Either she loses an arm or becomes his woman. Her mother tries to step in and yells that her daughter's a college student and that cannot happen. Out of patience, one of the men hits the older woman with a strike and throws her hard to the floor. The boss gets annoyed by her attitude and asks if she is looking down on him for being a worker. The young woman then tries to calm the situation and tells the man her mother did not mean it that way. She then changes her tune and praises the leader, saying she fell in love with him at first sight. With an evil smile, the man drags her in the bedroom, saying he will find out what a college girl is like. The mother screams in despair as her daughter is taken away with a strange, creepy smile on her face. Fallen on the floor, the older woman is completely shocked by her own daughter's attitude. Suddenly, two shadows approach, and in fear, she asks what they are doing near her. The henchmen comment that the older woman is still pretty and definitely has her charm. With that, they grab her and drag her to another room, saying they are not going to waste the opportunity. The woman screams desperately and calls them monsters as she is dragged away by the two men. A while later, we hear laughter coming from one of the rooms, and someone comments that it was great. The scene then shifts, and we see Senia with a man who asks how she is feeling now. Covered by a sheet, the readhead says she felt like she was on a roller coaster of emotions over the last few minutes. The man laughs and tells her to stay by his side, because he guarantees she will have a good life from now on. The young woman then asks how many supplies he stocked up, and he complains that the rich neighborhood has less than his own community. With an evil smile, the raidhead says the problem is he didn't try to loot the right person. Intrigued by the answer, the group boss leans in and asks her to tell him more about it. She reveals that a guy named Gavin stocked enough supplies for the whole community to live without worrying. The man is completely shocked by the information and asks if that is really true. The girl confirms it is true and even reveals that the protagonist also has a snowmobile to get around. With a determined look, he stands up and says there is no point in waiting, and they are going to raid the guy. Once outside, the raidhead points to the protagonist's mansion and announces that is where he lives. With a serious look, the group boss simply orders his men to follow him over there. The group of looters then arrives at the mansion and teams up with Hunter's group for the attack. Hunter then warns him that the protagonist has plenty of weapons and is not easy to deal with as they already lost to him. But the other boss just calls him useless and Hunter gets angry, telling him to show some respect. With a mocking smile, he says Hunter is scared of a student and tells him to watch how it is done. On the monitor, Yaniel sees the groups have teamed up and warns his friend that the guys are here for the attack. With an evil smile, the protagonist says it is perfect because they will be targets for target practice. He sets the weapons on the table and tells Yaniel, Kikukui, and Little Sixie to each grab one. Excited, Little Sixie picks up one of the weapons, says she always wanted to know what it feels like to shoot. Worried, the other young woman questions him and asks if they are really going to take those people's lives. The guy explains that it is a cruel apocalypse and humanity will not go back to normal anytime soon. With a determined look, she says she understands and grips the weapon tighter for the battle. Outside, the boss yells, introducing himself, and demands the protagonist open the door right now. Hunter watches from afar and thinks they are a bunch of idiots for getting so close just to meet their end. With the weapon in hand, Yaniel says it's time to play target practice while the girls get ready. One of the henchmen tells the boss they are not opening the door, and that they do not know what is good for them. Angry, the man runs up and yells that he is going to break the door down himself with a solid kick. With a powerful kick, he strikes the door and wonders if the punk thinks he can hide. But the man just screams in pain and complains that his foot hurts like heck from the impact. He then realizes the door was reinforced with iron and understands why they are so fearless. The blonde henchman says that will not stop them and offers to pry the door open with a knife. Suddenly, the door opens and the man alerts his boss about the unexpected opening. With a smug smile, the group leader says they know what is good for them and fears reputation. Inside, they are met by the protagonist's friend and the two girls waiting for them. The blonde henchman then spots the ladies and tells his boss there are pretty girls in the house. Angry, Xenia complains that Gavin took everyone in but rejected her, so he deserves whatever is coming. The group boss then walks up to Yaniel and mistakes him for Gavin, but the guy denies it. Furious, the man yells and asks what on earth he is doing there if he is not the homeowner. With a confident smile, the protagonist's classmate says he is there to teach them a lesson. In the neighborhood group, everyone gossips about the attack and says Gavin had it coming for being cruel. The blonde henchman gets angry at the audacity and charges at him, ordering to get on his knees. The man then closes in fast with his fist clenched, ready to strike, but before he could do anything, the reincarnated guy's friend draws a weapon and tells him to stop. The other henchmen are spooked and yell to the boss that they have a weapon, asking what to do. The group leader gets annoyed by the panic and asks if a single weapon scared them that much. With the weapon aimed, the guy turns the tables and orders the henchman to get on his knees in front of him. The man then mocks him, saying he would not dare fire since he only has one weapon against 10 of them. Without hesitating, Yaniel fires and hits the henchman squarely, knocking him to the floor with one blast. With the weapon smoking, he calls him an idiot and says in the apocalypse, life is worth nothing. The others panic and yell to the boss that their fourth brother is done for, and that it was him. Furious, the group leader gets angry and yells for his men to finish the guy off right now. With an axe in hand, he lunges forward and swears he will chop the punk into pieces. From afar, Hunter watches the fight and asks Xenia who she thinks is going to win the brawl. With an evil smile, he says it would be better if all of them met their end right there. With a confident look and a smile on his face, the protagonist's classmate says it is hunting time. He then fires again and hits the leg of another henchman, making him drop his axe. One of the men attacks him with a shovel and says he already warned him he only has one weapon to fight with. The reincarnated guy's friend realizes he is in trouble, and his expression turns into one of sheer panic. But suddenly, the man is hit by a precise blast right in the middle of his forehead. We then see that it was little Sixie who fired the shot and saved Yaniel from that deadly attack. Yaniel is thrilled and congratulates little Zixie for the great teamwork they pulled off. The group boss and his men are completely shocked to see they have another weapon. Angry, he yells for everyone to push forward because at 7 paces, a blade is faster than a bullet. The looters then charge at the two of them, promising a good life if they clinch the victory. Without hesitating, Yaniel and little Sixie start firing at the group of men closing in on them. He then turns to the other girl and asks why on earth she is just standing there doing nothing. At that, the young woman squeezes her eyes shut and starts firing in all directions non-stop. The group's henchmen are spooked by the shots and try to dodge the bullets flying everywhere. One of the men manages to get close to little Sixie and gets ready to strike her with his bat. But suddenly, the man is hit by a precise blast right in the middle of his forehead and drops instantly. The group boss is shocked and realizes there is someone else firing at them from a hidden spot. On the mansion's roof, we see the protagonist with a sniper rifle in his hands, ready to shoot. One of the henchmen then spots him and screams in terror to the boss that the kid has a sniper rifle.